Chapter 926. Let me do it. Qin Yin slowly opened her arms, and suddenly, a total of 13 golden god-binding chains emerged from her body. They encircled her body like elegant ribbons. The flames in the eyes of the blazing dawn flickered and fused with the god-binding chains. Then, a dazzling ice crystal was formed in front of her. It was a huge dragon crystal. Qin Yin activated almost all the power of the Law of Light's defensive martial technique. She knew that if she couldn't block this attack, everyone would die. She would die. Tang Xiaoxi, Feng Jixing, Terralin, Lake, and the others would all die. No one could escape from this joke of fate. Wasn't it a joke for a king god to challenge a consummate realm god emperor? Very good. Zai sneered. Shi Yan's sister is indeed extraordinary. Then, I will release you from purgatory today. Xin, your mistake is that you shouldn't be Qin Yin. Boom. The huge spirit will covered the sky and the earth. It had the momentum to destroy everything. In terms of destructive power and range of power, Zai's spirit will couldn't be compared to the spirit will Lin Muyu used before. It was stronger, bigger, and more powerful. Qin Yin gritted her teeth. Her face turned pale. The moment the spirit will collided with the celestial dragon crystal, she felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. She felt a chill in her heart. She realized that the celestial dragon crystal couldn't block the spirit will at all. Although her light divine power was the purest divine power, she was only a king god after all. Boom! The celestial dragon crystal began to collapse. However, at least half of the spirit wheel's power remained. Even if this half of the divine power swept across the entire city wall, Tang Xiaoxi, Terralin, and the others would be fatally injured. Qin Yin didn't hesitate anymore. With a shout, her body was bathed in flames. She rushed into the spirit wheel with the star's sword in her hand. Xiao Yin. Tang Xiaoxi screamed hysterically. Xin. Terralin stood there in a daze, unable to do anything. However, the movement of the divine will slowed down because of Qin Yin's power. The next moment, the divine will suddenly surged with countless sword lights. Terralin's beautiful eyes widened. It's Lady Xian's 7 strikes. Split, that's right, Qin Yin exerted all her strength to execute the 7 slashes that Xian had taught her. First slash, split. Sparks flew everywhere, and his divine will trembled slightly. Second slash, judgment. Golden light tore through the sky. His divine will was on the verge of collapse. The third slash, annihilation. The power of the divine will was finally exhausted. Countless beams of sword light pierced through the edges of the divine wheel and completely destroyed this life-threatening wheel. However, it also brought with it a golden rain of blood. When Qin Yin was ejected from the divine wheel, she was already covered in wounds. Xiao Yin. Tang Xiaoxi was the fastest. She shot out like lightning and hugged Qin Yin in the air. However, she saw that Qin Yin's face was frighteningly pale. The divine wall around her had already been swallowed and destroyed by the power of the divine wheel. Cuts appeared on her fair skin. If it wasn't for her profound cultivation, she would have been obliterated by the divine wheel. Xiao Shi, be careful. Qin Yin held Tang Xiaoxi's hand and forcibly used her grain's god power to slide down the city wall with Tang Xiaoxi. However, her grip became tighter and tighter, not letting Tang Xiaoxi go out. The opponent was too strong. Qin Yin's action was no different from not wanting Tang Xiaoxi to be in danger. However, in the air, Zai, Dora, Bai Minghuan, and the others still came. Zai had only used up 30% of his divine power when he used the divine wheel, so he still had his combat ability. Dora spread her 4 wings behind her. Holding the Tig's spear, she smiled and said, Tang Xiaoxi, do you want to fight me again? Xiao Shi, no. Qin Yin held Tang Xiaoxi's hand tightly. However, she was shocked to find that Tang Xiaoxi's appearance was changing. She had already entered the nine-tailed transformation, and her beautiful face had become even more bewitching. It was not just the nine-tailed transformation, but the second stage of the transformation, the demon god transformation. Tang Xiaoxi's jade-like palm instantly slipped out of Qin Yin's hand. She smiled gently and said, "Shao Yin, everyone is fighting with their lives on the line. How can I hide in the back alone? You should quickly rest and recover your strength. If I can't beat them, I still have to rely on you." As she spoke, Tang Xiaoxi transformed into a beam of light and shot into the sky. She fought with Dora, and the flames surged continuously. The two of them were evenly matched, and the winner would not be decided in a short period of time. However, Zai held his light sword and stood proudly in the air. He said, "Does this mean that I have no opponents?" "In your dreams." A handsome figure instantly appeared in front of him. It was Scholar Ling. Soon, the other three figures gathered together. Ice Palm, Fire Fist, and Behemoth King had all arrived. Su Hao gently waved the paper fan in his hand and said with a smile, "Zai, you are the radiant angel of the heaven realm. We, the four peerless white leaves of the mortal realm, are fighting you 4 against 1. It's not like we are bullying you, right?" Zai couldn't help but laugh out loud. "The few of you are the 4 peerless white leaves that Lin Muyu relies heavily on?" "That's right. Come, I also want to see how strong the people left behind by the former king of gods Fuxi of East Heaven are." Roar. Behemoth King didn't say anything. He charged over with a furious roar and punched Zai's head 3 times consecutively, forcing Zai to retreat continuously. He didn't even have time to prepare himself. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. Flames and frost attacked from both sides. Their power was extremely vigorous and domineering, making it difficult for Zai to endure. After all, he was fighting 1 against 4. Moreover, he was already injured when he pierced through the flame knot of the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor. He had just used up 30% of his power to condense the divine wheel. Even though his power was far above any of the 4 peerless white leaves, he indeed felt that he couldn't split himself into 2 in a short period of time. Luo Fei. Lake slowly rose into the air. The battle angel wings on his back spread open and a sword of light condensed in his hand. He said, "We didn't have a clear winner in the chosen god trial. Why don't we have a showdown this time? You should have thought that you would die a horrible death when you followed that poisonous woman Duo La." Luo Fei's expression was solemn as he raised his shield. He knew how powerful Lake was. The martial arts of the Dark Light family had its own lineage. The laws of light contained the power of darkness. Although they were despised by the gods of the Western Heaven realm, no one dared to underestimate the Dark Light family. In the second round of the chosen god trial, Lake was 3rd while Luo Fei was 4th. The two were originally evenly matched. "Come, Lake, let me see the power of the Dark Light family." "As you wish." Lake roared angrily. His long sword struck Luo Fei's shield with the power of dark light. It was indeed tyrannical. The two of them turned into a ball of flames and fell from the sky. They fell directly into the Paddy River. The river water surged and swirled. Rays of light shone on the surface of the river. The battle under the water was obviously extraordinary. Chu Chu, Feng Jixing, and Ouyang Yen looked at each other. This battle was about to become a battle of gods. Bai Minghuan and Lin Tongtian looked at each other and smiled. Bai Minghuan said, "Lord Dragon Knight Lin Tongtian, it's time for us to go. Send out all the Dragon Knights. In this battle, we must kill Qin Yin, Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi, and Feng Jixing. We must destroy the Qin Empire." "Yes, Marshal." Dozens of Dragon Knights quickly gathered in the sky and rushed toward the city wall with Bai Minghuan and Lin Tongtian. Qin Yin suddenly looked up. Her flaming eyes were filled with cold light. her star's sword was still trembling. She stepped on the bricks of the city wall and turned into a beam of light that shot toward Bai Minghuan. Even though she was injured in the spirit wheel, she still chose Bai Minghuan as her opponent. Ouyang Yan, Feng Jixing, and Chu Chu flew up one after another and fought with Lin Tongtian and the other dragon knights. Once the battle of gods began, the whole battlefield became even more chaotic. On the ground, it was a battle of mortals, while in the sky, it became a battle of gods. But what was amazing was that the power of both sides was balanced, and the only one who could break this balance was naturally Lin Muyu. While leading the charge, he paid attention to the fight in the sky. The battle between Tang Xiaoxi and Dora could not be decided in a short time, but it was obvious that Tang Xiaoxi's second form was very harmful to her body, and she could not fight for long. And Qin Yin was seriously injured and would not be a match for Bai Minghuan. So the balance of this battle was on Bai Minghuan's side. As long as Bai Minghuan was defeated, the morale of the Tianji Empire would naturally be disturbed. Either they did not attack, or if they attacked, they had to defeat the enemy in one blow. A few minutes later, Lin Muyu suddenly disappeared from the battle horse, and the one leading the charge was the masterless treading in snow warhorse. In the sky, the Xianyuan sword's light suddenly grew brighter. Bai Minghuan, who was fighting with Qin Yin, suddenly felt a chill around him. Even the four-dimensional space was completely blocked, and his body's movement speed became slower. It's here. Bai Minghuan sensed the approaching danger and hurriedly dodged. He saw the Xianyuan sword wrapped in frost fall right on the tip of his nose, and with a crack, it cut off half of the heart protection mirror on his chest. Lin Muyu. Bai Minghuan was furious. Lin Muyu's sword missed, and her body glided in the wind. She looked down at Bai Minghuan, sneered, and growled, "Freeze." The air froze instantly. This was a higher level of the snow ice. Bai Minghuan was caught off guard, and his body could not move at all. His whole body was frozen into a huge block of ice in the air. Lin Muyu pointed the Xianyuan sword at Bai Minghuan and growled, "Die." The blade shone with starlight, and the power of the seventh star roared out. Suddenly, the power of thousands of stars gathered in the air and bombarded Bai Minghuan, washing him in blood in the wind. At the same time, the huge star power fell at a 45-degree angle toward Daojiang, where the divine cloth army was densely packed. Boom, 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 the earth rumbled, and almost everyone looked in Lin Muyu's direction. The seven glorious stars' transformation had consumed at least 30% of Lin Muyu's power. Therefore, not only did she have to kill Bai Minghuan, she also had to kill thousands of divine cloth army soldiers. Only then would she be able to shake their morale. Under the super close attack, Bai Minghuan floated in the air, his eyes lost. His chest, legs, and even his forehead all had holes, which were the signs of being pierced by the star power. Bang! The body exploded. The Tianji Empire's marshal, Bai Minghuan, had actually died on the battlefield, just like the marshal of the Blackstone Empire, Bailey Qin. Chapter 927. Bai Minghuan is dead. Lin Muyu endured the pain from the backfire of the seven glorious stars, stood in the air, holding Bai Minghuan's collar with one hand, and carried his body in the air. For a moment, all the soldiers of the Tianji Empire on the ground were dumbfounded. Yes, that cloak was Bai Minghuan's martial cloak. Everyone was stunned. Bai Minghuan was an invincible god emperor. How could he die? However, Bai Minghuan was still dead. The morale of the army was in chaos. On the ground, Situ Sun and Situ Shui led the army of the Longdan army camp to kill the enemies who had lost their will to fight. Feng Jixing also waved the flag, and Luo Yu, Zhang Wei, and the others led the charge. It seemed that the initiative of the war had returned to the side of the Qin Empire. Qin Yin was covered in wounds, and the star's sword in her hand was shaking slightly. But her golden red eyes of flame were staring at another figure in the air, and she shouted, "Dora, it's time for you to pay with your life." What? Dora, who was fighting with Tang Xiaoxi, hurriedly waved the bone spear to shake off Tang Xiaoxi's sharp claws. But Qin Yin was too fast. Under the gaze of the eyes of flame, Dora felt that he had nowhere to hide. At the same time, the star's sword carried the power of the first strike of Shi Yan's 7 cuts, and instantly burst out dense sword shadows. Tang Xiaoxi took the opportunity to take a step back to catch her breath. There was a hint of exhaustion on her beautiful face. It was obvious that fighting against Dora, who was wielding 2 divine weapons, had taken too much of her demon power. Xian, you traitor of the heaven realm! Dora bellowed as her expression turned sinister. For black wings spread open on her back, and her aura was even stronger than Qin Yin's. Dora was a black-winged battle angel. The more people she killed, the stronger her bloodlust would become, and the more power her black wings would absorb. At this moment, it was only natural that her cultivation had surpassed Qin Yin's. The spear continued to stab forward, and after nearly 20 swings, Qin Yin's split strike was finally resolved. Without waiting for Dola to recover, Qin Yin directly launched the second strike of Shi Yan's 7 slashes, Judgment. Dola's murderous nature was so strong that even Qin Yin, with her kind nature, wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible. Whoosh! The dagger of time suddenly flashed, and the space seemed to freeze. Qin Yin's slash speed also slowed down by more than 10 times. Dora, on the other hand, had a hint of a smile on her face. Suddenly, her figure flashed, and the sharp spear in her hand stabbed straight at Qin Yin's back. Clang! The spear directly pierced through the god wall. Just as Dora thought he had succeeded, the wild glint in his eyes grew even brighter. However, the spear could not advance any further no matter how hard he tried. That was because a strong hand had grabbed the middle of the spear. It was Lin Muyu. You! Dora could not help but groan inwardly. Let go! Lin Muyu raised her hand and swung her sword. The Xianyuan sword carried the profound energy of the third star and the overwhelming righteous energy as it swept across. This tyrannical power had yet to even reach Dora, but it already made him feel extremely uncomfortable. Dora had a ruthless heart that respected the strong, so he hated the holy energy contained within the Xianyuan sword, which contained the power of heaven and earth and had compassion for all living things. If he did not let go of the spear, this arm was destined to die under the Xianyuan sword. Dora had no doubt that the person who could kill Bai Minghuan could easily kill him as well. Moreover, this sword was really too powerful. It must be a divine weapon from outside the heaven domain. Otherwise, it could not have such a tyrannical aura. This kind of strength was not something that the weapons in the mortal realm could match. Whoosh! Dora hurriedly retracted his hand. Lin Muyu threw the spear backward and shouted, "Shao Shi, catch!" In the air, Tang Xiaoxi's 9 flame tails gathered together and flew away. She successfully got the spear. Taking a deep breath, she smiled gently and said, "Mu, got it." As she spoke, Lin Muyu had already stood in front of Qin Yin and attacked Dora 7 or 8 times in a row. Each attack was fiercer than the last. The invisible elephant spell's aura was so overwhelming that Dora could not handle it. The Xianyuan sword's attacks also had a killing effect. Broken feathers kept flying out of Dora's 4 black wings. It was a tragic scene. Qin Yin's eyes were full of hatred. The aura of the flaming eyes was locked on Dora, making her feel like she was dying. "Brother you must kill her, or she will kill more of us." Lin Muyu's attacks became even more ferocious, while Qin Yin summoned the god-binding chains and the celestial dragon crystal to assist her in battle. The 3 of them clashed in the air, and the wounds on Dora's body increased. "Luo Fei, save me!" She couldn't help but scream. However, Luo Fei did not even have the time to save himself. How could he have the leisure to save her? In the middle of the battle in the air, a person wielding an ice spear urged his dragon to charge down. He shouted, "Miss Dora, I'll cover you. Retreat quickly." The person was none other than Lin Tongtian, one of the 3 dragon riders. The ice spear shone brightly and turned into an ice wall in front of Lin Muyu and Qin Yin. Dora held the dagger of time and suddenly moved a few hundred meters away. That was the ability to accelerate time. Bang, bang. Lin Muyu broke the ice wall with 2 swords. She looked at Lin Tongtian coldly and said, "We meet again." Ha ha ha, that's right. It's a pity that I had eyes but failed to see. I didn't know that you were the Qin Emperor of the Qin Empire. If I had known, I would have killed you at all costs. Lin Tongtian's body trembled slightly. He had already used up a lot of his divine power in the previous battle. Now that he had to fend off Lin Muyu and Qin Yin, he was almost at the end of his rope. He didn't even have enough strength to flap his dragon wings. Lin Muyu looked at him coldly and said, "Do you know the consequences of letting Dora go?" "I don't know. I only know that Miss Dora is an angel from the upper realm. Our Tianji Empire is a territory of the upper realm. I have to save her. Otherwise, it will bring disaster to the empire." Lin Tongtian stood on the dragon's back and looked at Lin Muyu with clear eyes. He said, "Your Highness, the Qin Emperor, I'm sure you don't want to let me go. In that case, make your move. I know that the Lin Tongtian of today is no match for you. Moreover, you have a godly weapon that is even more powerful than the Dig's spear." Lin Muyu lowered the Xianyuan sword in her hand and said, "You are an old acquaintance of Yao. I won't kill you. Take your own life. I'll leave you with a whole corpse. In that case, thank you very much." Lin Tongtian's face was full of gratitude. Tang Xiaoxi and Qin Yin guarded the left and right sides of Lin Tongtian. Lin Tongtian probably couldn't even defeat one of the 3, let alone all 3 of them. Ha ha ha, Lin Tongtian suddenly threw his head back and laughed. His voice was trembling as he said, "I, Lin Tongtian, have spent my entire life killing enemies for the empire and wiping out the demon spirits. I never thought that I would die in a foreign land. Perhaps this is karma. Lin Muyu, Qin Yin, if the 2 of you conquer the world one day, please treat the people of the world kindly." Lin Muyu said softly, "Don't worry, sir. We will. In that case, I have no regrets. Tell Miss Si Kongyao that although I, Lin Tongtian, failed her request not to attack the Shattered Cauldron world, I have been doing my duty ever since I entered the Shattered Cauldron world. I didn't kill a single commoner. I restrained my subordinates and tried my best to prevent the people from suffering. Take this as my compensation to Miss Si Kongyao." Ha ha ha. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. I should have followed Miss to the Blackstone Empire and become a mercenary. He didn't know that the mercenary Bai Zhe was actually Lin Muyu's subordinate. Qin Yin couldn't bear to see him like this. She said, "Lin Tongtian, if you have any regrets, why don't you stay in the Qin Empire? We will treat every capable general well." "No." Lin Tongtian shook his head and said, "I'm already getting old. I still know what shame and integrity are. A loyal subject doesn't serve 2 masters. We'll meet again in the next life." As he said this, the divine power in Lin Tongtian's body suddenly became chaotic. Golden light burst out and his joints and meridians exploded. Blood splattered everywhere. His cultivation dissipated in the blink of an eye and he fell to his knees on the dragon's back. His black hair turned white in an instant. Once his divine power dissipated, he naturally lost the ability to maintain his youth. Lin Tongtian's face aged rapidly and he looked towards the east with tears streaming down his face. Lin Muyu's nose turned sour. She said softly, "Don't worry, my lord. I'll send someone to bring your ashes back to the celestial pole continent and hand them over to Yao. She'll bury you in your hometown." Lin Tongtian raised his head and looked at Lin Muyu. He lowered his head and fell backward. Just like that, Lin Tongtian, a dragon rider general and one of Sikong Ming's 3 disciples, committed suicide on the battlefield by destroying his meridians. Retreat! Defend the shore! The shout of the 4-winged radiant angel, Midnight, came from the sky. He shook off the Beeman King and raised his palm. A ray of light shone down, forcing the other 3 members of the 4 Masters of White Leaves to retreat. He turned around and disappeared in the blink of an eye. If the 4-winged radiant angel wanted to leave, there weren't many people who could stop him. On the ground, the army of the Tianji Empire also retreated like the tide. However, it wasn't easy for all of them to cross the river. This was a hard-won opportunity for a counterattack. Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu wouldn't let it go. The Longdan army camp, the Imperial Guards, and the other legions counterattacked one after another. The sound of killing soared into the sky. At this time, the sun had already set. After a whole day of killing, the battlefield was extremely bleak. However, it was gratifying that the Qin Empire had won a Pyrrhic victory. In the sky, there were still 3 dragon knights flying around. They were covering the retreat of the ground troops and releasing sword energy into the crowd. At the same time, one of them raised his head and saw a new magic crystal cannon on the city wall. He couldn't help but raise his dragon spear and shouted, "Follow me and destroy it." However, the protector of this dragon crystal cannon was Situ Senator. However, Situ Sen didn't stop the dragon knights from coming. He just said to the artilleryman beside him, "It's done. Aim and fire." "Yes, General." The cannon was quickly calibrated and the muzzle was raised. Bang! A flame was spat out. This magic crystal cannon didn't seem to be very powerful. It exploded less than 100 meters away from the barrel. Moreover, the range of the explosion was far less than the 50 meters of the heavy magic crystal cannon. It was only 10 meters. However, one of the dragon knights had already entered the explosion range. In the shock wave, tiny stones flew out and shot into the dragon knight's body. It actually avoided the dragon imperial spiral. Ah, a miserable howl came from the sky. The people of the imperial army were dumbfounded. The magic crystal cannon had always been useless against the dragon knights. However, this cannon seemed to have hit the dragon knight. Chapter 928. Qin Xiling clapped his hands and laughed. "Sure enough, it's a success. Our god-slaying cannon has succeeded." Situ Sen looked to the other side and said, "Magic crystal cannon, give it a try." "Yes." In the air, the god-level dragon knight that was hit hurriedly urged his dragon to escape, but it seemed that he couldn't escape the magic crystal cannon that was being calibrated on the city wall behind him. Bang! Raging flames stuck out its tongue, and suddenly there was an explosion 300 meters away. The light from the explosion of the magic crystal cannon instantly engulfed the dragon knight. Without the protection of the dragon imperial battle wheel, both the dragon knight and the dragon knight were blown to pieces. Even his divinity was probably blown up. On the city wall, a group of soldiers were dancing with joy. Looking at the enemies retreating like the tide, they suddenly felt that they had a new lease of life. The most important thing was that the Qin Empire finally had a weapon to deal with the god-state strong, the god-slaying cannon. Although it was only a prototype, at least it could be used as a deterrent. The battle went on until late at night. Most of the Tianji Empire's troops had already crossed the river. Those who couldn't cross the river were either killed or captured. Jianghu was not their territory. That night, almost no one slept. Lin Muyu, Qin Yin, Tang Xiaoxi, and the others also didn't sleep. The battle was in full swing, and no one could sleep. Moreover, almost everyone needed to heal. The steel wall had been blown up for nearly 5 kilometers, and there was basically no way to station troops in the city. Therefore, most of the troops were stationed in the unicorn forest behind the wall. At dawn, thousands of lights connected in the forest, and the sound of cooking could be heard everywhere. The soldiers had been fighting for a day and needed to replenish their strength. In the central tent, Chuyao carefully applied medicine and bandaged Qin Yin's wound. She said, "Your Highness, who injured you to this extent?" Qin Yin closed her eyes and smiled softly. "It's not someone else who injured me. I just broke into the spirit wheel. Sister Chuyao, thank you so much. When you bandaged me, he didn't know how to control his strength. It hurt so much," Chuyao giggled. "You is a general, so of course he doesn't know what's important." Lin Muyu was sitting at the side, using his qi to heal Tang Xiaoxi's injuries. He realized that Tang Xiaoxi's bones would be damaged after her second transformation. If she didn't receive treatment for a long time, she would definitely become a cripple. Fortunately, his supreme divine power was of the same origin as Fushi's divine power, and Fushi's divine power itself had the ability to heal the divine body. Terralin, Lake, Xiangyu, Chu Chu, Su Hao and the others also returned one by one. The battle during the day ended before dawn the next day, and the men from each battalion had also returned. When Zhen Yifan and Su Yu opened the tent door and walked in, Lin Muyu knew the results were out. "Master Fan, what's the result of the calculation?" Lin Muyu asked. Zheng Yifan bowed respectfully, then bowed to Qin Yin and said, "Reporting to Your Highness, our army lost more than 114,000 men in this battle. That's half of our military strength." "So many?" Tang Xiaoxi murmured. "Yes." Zheng Yifan said, "The enemy's military strength was originally above ours." "So what's the result of the battle?" "We counted more than 143,000 corpses of the Tianji Empire's soldiers and more than 8,000 captives. According to the number of people, the Tianji Empire still has about 150,000 soldiers in the west of Daojiang, which is 50,000 more than us. Moreover, it is said that there are still warships of the Tianji Empire in the East Sea, and they have already begun to recruit new soldiers in Lingdong province." Zhen Yifan's eyes were slightly uneasy as he said, "Your Highness, if the next battle is still like this, I'm afraid that even if we annihilate the Tianji Empire's expeditionary army, there won't be more than 10,000 soldiers left in our army." Qin Yin nodded, "Yes, I know. Master Fan, you've worked hard. Please take a seat." "Thank you, Your Highness." Feng Jixing sat cross-legged beside Lin Muyu and asked, "So what should we do next?" "Wait." Lin Muyu said, "Su Jiantao and Wei Chou have already led 5,000 light cavalry to the enemy's rear. Let's see how much rations they can burn. Once the Tianji Empire's rations run out, they will naturally retreat without attacking. At that time, we can just send our cavalry to chase after them. When their people are so hungry that they can't walk, they will naturally be defeated." "Yes, then let's wait." Feng Jixing nodded, then looked up and said, "Luo Yu, pass down my order. All the prefectures in Sangnan province must transfer half of the stored rations to the camp of the Tianji Empire's army, so that the soldiers can eat and drink to their heart's content and recuperate. In addition, gather war horses and capture horses that get lost in the battle, the more the better." "Yes, Your Highness." "Also," Lin Muyu said, "Luo Yu, send people to the unicorn forest to cut down trees and make wooden rafts, the more the better. We need to build many pontoon bridges. Once the Tianji Empire retreats, it will be time for us to chase after them." "Yes, I understand." In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. The injuries of Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi, Qin Yin, Feng Jixing, and the others had basically recovered, but the repair work on the steel wall had not yet begun. It would only start after the battle was over. However, quite a number of civilian laborers had been recruited. Su Jiantao had guarded Sangnan province for 5 years, and he had been conscientious. Wugu's city was overflowing with wealth, and the manpower and material resources could still be considered to be able to keep up. Early in the morning, a few more troops appeared on the official road. They were all private troops from Tianshu province and Yunzhong province who had heard the news. After hearing about the great victory of the Steel Wall, all the feudal lords from various places came to rescue the empress. In fact, everyone knew that these people were just here to get a share of the spoils and receive more rewards after the empress returned to Zetian Palace Hall. Even some of the bandit leaders brought their men down the mountains to rescue the empress. The morning tea rippled with a faint fragrance. Qin Yin held the teacup and gently took a deep breath. She couldn't help but smile and say, "It still smells the same." Shengguan Jinghua chuckled and said, "Well, the tea in Wugu City is not much different from the tea in Lanyan City. It's good that your highness likes it." However, Feng Jixing was somewhat frowning. Although Qin Yin couldn't see it, she could feel it. "General Feng, what's wrong?" She was still used to calling Feng Jixing General Feng because this was how he used to be. Feng Jixing cupped his fists respectfully and said, "Your Highness, there are more and more troops in the Unicorn Forest. The feudal lords from Tianshu Province, Cangnan Province, and Lingbei Province have all taken out their family assets. This Unicorn Forest is filled with chaotic troops, but they don't obey orders. I sent Luo Yu and Zhang Wei to recruit their troops. The feudal lords from various places made different excuses, but none of them were willing to listen to my orders." Qin Yin nodded and didn't say anything. Su'er said, "When the conscription order was issued, we also thought of this result, but we didn't expect it to develop to this point. Now, the Imperial Army in the Unicorn Forest only has a total of 100,000 people, while the feudal lords have close to 300,000 people. They are divided into hundreds of feudal armies, and the largest of them has 40,000 people. However, they are all a motley crew, and no one is willing to be the vanguard." Zhen Yifan said, "The laissez-faire of power has already made these feudal lords not know what a ruler is." Qin Yin bit her red lips and asked, "Xiaoxi, what do you think?" Tang Xiaoxi put down her teacup and said, "I went to see the feudal lords' armies this morning, and it's not too much to call them a motley crew. Many of the troops are even made up of farmers. In order to gather a strong army, the feudal lords have gone around snatching people, and there's even a rule of drawing 1 out of 3. That's not all. There should be about 2 million feudal lords' armies in the entire country, but most of them are farmers. These people should be discharged from the army and returned to farming. Otherwise, if the land can't grow food, how can the empire continue to fight?" Then what does Xiaoxi mean? We have to think of a way to not only appease the feudal lords, but also make them reduce the number of troops. Otherwise, if this goes on for a long time, I'm afraid we'll fall into chaos. Feng Jixing made a cutting gesture. "In my opinion, it's better to cut the Gordian knot and slaughter all the feudal lords. We'll take their elite troops and disperse the rest of the troops." "That won't do." Tang Xiaoxi shook her head. "Your method may work in troubled times, but once we expel the bandits from the celestial pole continent, we'll be ruling the country. If we use General Feng's method to rule the country, Xiao Yin definitely won't be able to be the empress." Qin Yin pursed her red lips and said, "Actually, it doesn't matter if I don't become the empress, as long as I can accompany you and you." "Please don't." Tang Xiaoxi was a little anxious, and said, "Xiao Yin, you must not have such an idea. If you don't become the empress, I'm afraid the world will really be in chaos. At that time, all the feudal lords will proclaim themselves as kings and fight each other. The Qin Empire will really be finished." "All right then. I wonder what you thinks. Where is he?" "He went out early in the morning. I heard he went to spy on the military, so you couldn't help but frown." "So you couldn't help but frown. A dignified marshal of the 3 armies going out to spy on military affairs is simply child's play. When he comes back, we must give him a good warning." "Pa!" A crack appeared in the tent, and Lin Muyu stepped out and said with a smile, "What does Aunt Luo want to warn me about?" Su Yu pursed her lips. "What did you spy on?" "The Flowing Harmony Army and the Divine Cloth Army have already started packing their supplies. If nothing unexpected happens, they will definitely retreat within 3 days. In addition, there was no smoke in their camp at noon yesterday. If nothing unexpected happens, they have already run out of food, so they directly skipped their lunch. They ran out of food? Feng Jixing asked excitedly. Yes, it should be. Lin Muyu asked with a smile, Big Brother Feng, how many cavalry soldiers do we have? Don't worry. Feng Jixing said, I annihilated 60,000 wolf soldiers in Yunzhong province, and most of their mounts are well preserved. It can be said that as long as our main force of 100,000 soldiers can ride horses, we will have 100,000 cavalry. That's great. I saw that there are almost no warhorses in the stables of the Tianji Empire. They started slaughtering the warhorses a day ago. I reckon that in another 2 days, they will all become infantry. If nothing unexpected happens, Wei Chou and Su Jiantao's operation behind the enemy's back has already been effective. The time to counterattack will also come in 1 or 2 days. Yes. Man proposes, but God disposes. Sometimes, no matter how scheming people were, the factors of the right time and the right place would not change because of people's will. Although the Tianji Empire was strong, it always lagged behind others and would eventually be defeated. Chapter 929. At night, the sky was filled with stars. The fog of the summer night slowly descended and turned into dew. The camp was damp, and the dew on the branches and leaves kept splashing down, making pitter-patter sounds on the tent as if it was raining. Gong Xiangming stood quietly under the lantern, raising his head to look at the stars in the sky. He did not speak. Whoosh! The tent door opened, and Castor, the commander of the Flowing Dawn Army, appeared. Why aren't you sleeping, advisor? He asked with a smile. Gong Xiangming nodded and smiled. How can I sleep? Why aren't you sleeping, commander? I can't sleep either. Castor rubbed his nose and said, Have you heard the news, advisor? The Eternal Night sect, the Blood Cloak sect, and the other sects have all surrendered to the Four-Winged Angel, Zai. The entire Divine Cloak army is no longer under our control. It's as if it has become the private army of the Radiant Angel. This is not good. What else can we do? Gong Xiangming seemed to be in a daze. With the death of the marshal, we are without a leader. Neither you nor I have enough prestige to command the 3 armies. Even Lord Dragon Rider Lin Tongtian died in battle, and that Dora has joined Zai. At this moment, they are the true rulers. We can only take things one step at a time. The rear supply route has been cut off time and time again. The light cavalry of the Longdan army camp sometimes gathers and sometimes scatters. They come and go unpredictably and have already burned more than 20 of our granaries. We can't even feed our soldiers a full meal anymore. The warhorses have been eaten in 3 days, and it will take at least 10 days to walk to Winter Frost City. What can these 150,000 soldiers eat to last 10 days? Gong Xiangming was silent. You are the advisor. You should at least say something, right? Castor said calmly. All right. Gong Xiangming looked up at Castor and asked, Commander, do you think we are humans or beasts? Nonsense, of course we are humans. Then I am at my wit's end. Then. Castor frowned and said, What if we are beasts? Then there is a way to feed the army. What way? Eating human flesh. Gong Xiangming's voice was soft but firm. Those who achieve great things don't bother with trifles. From here to Winterfrost City, although the land is barren and there are few cities and towns, there are still some villages. Send our people into the villages to capture the civilians of the Qin Empire and eat them. That way, the army may be able to make it back to Winterfrost City. Castor instantly broke out in a cold sweat. If they followed Gong Xiangming's plan, the Tianji Empire would no longer be able to establish itself in the Shattered Cauldron realm in the future. After all, who would support a man-eating army? His eyelids twitched violently as he said, military advisor, this is simply heartless. If we really do this, the Tianji Empire can forget about ruling over the Shattered Cauldron realm. Hehe, Commander, do you still think the Tianji Empire can defeat the Qin army? What do you mean? There are at least 800,000 troops recruited by our empire and Lord Zhang Cheng's troops. Why can't we win this war? Gong Shangming took a deep breath and said, because the Empress of the Qin Empire, Qin Yin, is back. With the loyalty of the people, and with the famous generals like Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Su Jiantao, and Wei Chou, how can we fight the Qin Empire? Even if we take a step back, we can only rely on the Dragon Knights. But now they have giant cannons that can kill the Dragon Knights. They are ahead of us in terms of weapons. If we continue to stay in the Shattered Cauldron realm, we will only be a burden to our homeland and the Tianji Empire. At that time, if the new emperor of the Celestial Empire, Chen Yu, uses force, I'm afraid even our homeland will be in the hands of others. Castor felt a chill down his spine. Military advisor, are you serious? What else is there to hide from you? Gong Shangming turned around and patted Castor's shoulder lightly. He smiled and said, previously, we may have had some disagreements in terms of strategy and caused some misunderstandings. But now, there are no gaps at all. Commander, don't think that we are the victors anymore. The expeditionary army has already been defeated. If we continue to be stubborn, we will only push the Tianji Empire to the edge of a cliff. After all, the Tianji Empire is different from the Blackstone Empire. Our territory is vast and the people are rich. It is enough to compete with the Celestial Empire. We don't have to bet all our bets on the Shattered Cauldron realm. After all, in terms of military force and strategy, we have lost to the Qin Empire. Castor frowned. Military advisor, do you think we have lost to Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing in terms of strategy? Yes. Gong Shangming admitted. We killed the enemy with an absolute advantage in military force, but we suffered a crushing defeat. At least half of the responsibility of military strategy and command has to be borne. Then, what do we do now? Haven't we already decided to retreat? Commander, you can send 10,000 people into the villages and towns in the rear to capture people to make food. Then, you can leave 50,000 elites to persuade the godly E army to help us fight. We can camp every 20 miles and retreat step by step to prevent the Qin army from chasing after us. In this way, maybe we can return to Winter Frost City alive. Well, I got it. Thank you for your advice, military advisor. A ferocious smile appeared at the corner of Castor's mouth. In the battle a few days ago, we captured more than 2,000 soldiers of the Qin Empire. It's just right. Let's make them into food first. Gong Shangming was silent. From a military point of view, eating people was right. But from a moral point of view, the Tianji army was gradually becoming a beast. The morale of the army would change sooner or later. It was just that a reckless man like Castor did not understand such a change. The next morning, the soldiers of the Liuji army got up one after another, ready to break camp and retreat. But the meal before the retreat made many people vomit, because they found human fingers, legs, and other body parts in the soup pot. Unknowingly, the army rations had changed from grains to human flesh. Many people refused to eat it, and many people vomited after eating or drinking a mouthful of soup. Castor held the soup bowl and looked at the people coldly. He drank the soup in one gulp and shouted in a low voice, "If you don't eat, you won't have the strength to march. If you want to leave here alive, then eat. Eat as much as you can. Otherwise, stay here and become the food of the Qin army. Let me tell you, the meat in the soup pot is the meat of the enemy. We are not afraid of the living Qin army, let alone the dead ones. Eat the meat, and then you can go back to your hometown alive." Many of the soldiers cried and chewed as they cried. Gong Shangming, dressed in a long robe, stood quietly among a group of strategists. His face was livid. He did not eat anything, but he was so hungry that his eyes almost went blurry. Break camp and retreat. The bugle horn sounded. The 150,000 soldiers of the Tianji Empire finally retreated. In the west of Daojiang, behind a dilapidated steel wall, a scout of the Empire entered the main tent and said respectfully, "They have retreated." "That's great." Feng Jixing slammed the table and said, "Prepare to give chase immediately." The scout's face did not look too good. He said, "There's one more thing." "Oh? What is it?" "Say it," Lin Muyu said. The scout gritted his teeth and said, "Our people found out that they killed all the captives and used them as food last night. More than 2,000 people of the Empire who were captured, all died for the Empire. Beasts, they are a bunch of beasts." Xiangyu roared. Qin Yin's delicate body trembled slightly. She clenched her fists tightly. The golden flames between her eyelashes became even colder. Lin Muyu gently held her hand and said softly, "War is like this, we have seen a lot of such things over the years." "I know, but, those soldiers of the Empire should not die like this, they will rest in peace because we will avenge them." Lin Muyu's words were sonorous. She said, "Since they are out of food, they will try their best to get food. Bring me the map and see which towns are on the way to Winter Frost City. We must reinforce these towns as soon as possible. We cannot let the people of the Empire continue to become food for the enemy." "Yes." Zhen Yifan suddenly said in a low voice, "Your Highness if we give chase, what will happen to the feudal vassal army? They have gathered nearly 400,000 men and horses, and food is also very scarce." Lin Muyu frowned. "I don't know. Does Duke Fan have any ideas on this matter? The feudal vassal army appears to be united, but they are actually divided. Each of them has ulterior motives. We must appease them well. Otherwise, there will be chaos. In that case, Duke Fan is the Empire's god of war. Your prestige is enough to intimidate these feudal vassals. Why don't you stay behind and appease them? This way, Commander Feng Jixing and I can focus on pursuing the enemy." Zhen Yifan nodded. "Please rest assured, Your Highness Yin and Your Highness Yu. I will do my best." "Yes." Qin Yin stood up and said, "I will pursue the enemy with Commander Yu. Aunt C, you should stay behind as well and assist Duke Fan in appeasing the feudal vassals. We must be careful in this matter." Su Yu cupped her fists. "Yes, Your Highness." "So, it's decided?" Feng Jixing asked. Qin Yin nodded. "Yes." "Good. Tell the three armies to prepare to cross the river and pursue them." In the afternoon, countless bamboo rafts and wooden rafts were placed in the Rice River. They joined together to form a man-made pontoon bridge. War horses neighed as they crossed the river. The waves of the Rice River were turbulent, but it could not stop the pursuit of the Imperial Army. Nearly 100,000 people had crossed the Rice River in less than 4 hours. However, they could not carry heavy weapons anymore. The pontoon bridge could not bear the weight of the heavy magic crystal cannons. Before evening, the cavalry led by Qin Yin, Lin Muyu, and Feng Jixing had already caught up with the Tianji Empire's army. After a fierce battle, more than 10,000 people were beheaded. It seemed that the Tianji Empire had lost their will to fight and was unwilling to continue the battle. They only left an army to cover the rear. However, they were unlucky. They were targeted by the main force of the Qin Empire's army. At midnight, the War Eagle scouts reported that an army of the God Yi army had gone to Longhai County. There were nearly 50,000 residents in Longhai County. Once the hungry God Yi army arrived, almost all the civilians there would become food. Lin Muyu decided to split up the army. Feng Jixing, Tang Xiaoxi, and Xiang Yu would lead the main force to continue the pursuit. Meanwhile, he and Qin Yin would lead 20,000 cavalrymen from the Longdan army camp and go straight to Longhai County. Chapter 930. It was Longhai County, which was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. There were 3 official roads leading to the periphery. Most of the civilians in the county lived by farming and hunting. Most of them were farmers and hunters. Cangnan Province had experienced many wars, but Longhai County had escaped the disaster because it was relatively hidden. They had escaped the attack of the Iha kingdom and the slaughter of the armored demon army of the demon clan, but they had not escaped the baptism of the divine cloth army. At this time, the city walls were filled with the divine clothing army in red armor. The city was filled with cries and shouts. The entire city had been sealed off. The divine clothing army was capturing people in the city. Moreover, they did not intend to cook the people immediately. Instead, they wanted to feed the group of people. As they walked, they would eat them. They even wanted to dry the meat and use it as rations. This group of divine cloth army soldiers were from the Eternal Night sect. They wore red armor and black robes. Most of them were practitioners, but most of them were in the human realm, the earth realm, and the heaven realm. Without food, they would also be hungry, and they were no different from mortals. In the city, the civilians were connected by iron chains, crying. They did not know what was waiting for them, but it was obviously not good. On the square, Jin Luan, the white-haired suzerain of the Eternal Night sect, was riding on a warhorse. He looked at his subordinates coldly and said, "Finish the battle quickly. We must leave this city in 2 hours." "Yes." A Chiliarch asked, "Suzerain, no, Commander, we have captured a lot of beautiful women. What should we do?" Jin Luan was a little angry. "You still want to kill women at this moment? You are courting death. Send my order to kill them all. We must not be dragged down by women. What we need is food. Immediately rob their granaries and use them as food for the army." "Yes." Before he could finish his words, a rider arrived. It was a messenger with a Saint Realm cultivation base. He cupped his fists and reported, "Sovereign, there are people coming from outside. There are many torches in the distance, and all of them are cavalries. It seems like they are the main force of the Qin army." "Main force?" Jin Luan narrowed his eyes. "Humph, how many people are there?" "About 20,000. The Qin army is too arrogant. How dare they take the initiative to attack us with 20,000 people? Don't they know that there are 30,000 divine cloth army in this small Longhai County? Send my order to prepare for battle. Rely on the strength of the city to repel the enemy. Open the east gate of the city. Once they are stopped, immediately retreat from the east gate." "Yes." Under the moonlight, the soldiers of the Longdan army had arrived at the west gate of Longhai County. Under the moonlight, the soldiers of the Longdan army led Lin Muyu soldiers in the city. Under the city, the soldiers of Longhai had arrived. Of guards of the Longdan Longhai County. On the city wall, the soldiers of the Divine Cloth Army were waiting in formation, holding bows and crossbows in their hands. One of the captains shouted, "Who are you? Are you here to die?" Lin Muyu frowned and did not answer. She just said to Sidu Shui next to her, "Shui, order the magic crystal crossbow troop to fire the magic crystal crossbows. Blow up the west gate." "Yes." Sidu Shui smiled cheerfully. After all, Longhai County was just a remote county city. Its defense was not strong at all. The city wall was only 5 meters high, and its thickness was very average. It could be blown up by the magic crystal crossbows, let alone the magic crystal cannons. "Hey, are you deaf or mute? Answer me." The captaincy seemed to be a little impatient. However, as soon as he finished speaking, purple rays of light suddenly shot out from the enemy's battle formation. Surprisingly, they were magic crystal arrows that landed on the city wall. The miniature magic crystals tied to the arrows glowed dazzlingly, and after 3 seconds, they quickly exploded. Boom, boom, boom. A series of flames appeared on the city wall. In the blink of an eye, the nearly 100 meters high wall had been razed to the ground. Charge in. Lin Muyu raised the Xian Yuan sword and shouted, "Anyone who wears the uniform of the Divine Cloth Army, kill them all." The cavalry quickly broke through the city wall and fought with the guards in the city. In the air, a person roared and launched a divine attack. Balls of flames blasted into the crowd of people in the Longdan army camp. Suddenly, dozens of people died. There was actually a god state expert on the other side. It was an old man with white hair. But obviously, he was not worthy of respect at this time. He was just a killing maniac. "I'll take care of him." Lin Muyu jumped off the warhorse. Suddenly, his aura increased a lot. He rushed forward and attacked with his long sword with the energy of the purple sun falling to the ground. "I am Jin Luan, the leader of the Eternal Night sect." "Who are you? Tell me your name." In the dark, Jin Luan could not see Lin Muyu's face at all. He could only see the golden sword in his hand. But he could not hear the answer. Crack! The Xianyuan sword was so sharp that it instantly sliced through the steel sword in Jin Luan's hand. Following the momentum, it sliced Jin Luan's head and shoulders into two. A mere godly state expert at the 28th level of Grotto Heaven was completely unable to withstand Lin Muyu's attack. "Lin Muyu," he said softly. But he realized that Jin Luan was already dead. He was destined not to hear this sentence. The leader is dead, the leader is dead in battle, the leader was killed, the crowd was in chaos. The main force of the Divine Cloth Army, which was made up of cultivators from the Eternal Night sect, seemed to have lost their backbone in an instant. Lin Muyu, who was holding the Xianyuan sword, waved her long sword like a god of death. It was as if there was no one around her. When a few captains were trying their best to maintain the momentum of defeat, another golden light bloomed in the sky. It was Qin Yin's golden wings. The eyes of the blazing dawn slowly opened, and the Divine Cloth Army almost instantly lost the ability to fight. Terralin, Lake, Zhou Shimin, and other battle angels took advantage of the situation and swept across. Situ Shui, Fengxi, and others on the ground quickly killed them. The God E army had already been defeated. Even if their cultivation level was higher than the ordinary soldiers of the Longdan army camp, these God E army were not real soldiers after all. When they encountered such a battle formation, they would naturally panic. With the presence of gods such as Lin Muyu, Qin Yin, and Terralin, it was not surprising that they were defeated. In this way, there was a chaotic battle in the city. It was not until the early morning of the next day that the battle ended. The Longdan army camp wiped out nearly half of the God E army with the loss of 4,000 people. Under such an advantage, they still had to pay 4,000 people for killing 20,000 people. It was enough to show that the reputation of the 7 great sects of the celestial pole continent was not undeserved. However, this battle had also greatly affected the arrogance of the God E army, and the nearly 10,000 people who fled had no fighting spirit to speak of. On the 19th of July, after a short rest and feeding of the warhorses, the Longdan army camp attacked again in the morning. In less than an hour, they caught up with the defeated 10,000 God E army in the valley between two mountains and quickly massacred them. This time, the loss was very small. The entire 30,000 people of the God E army were all killed, and there were no more than 100 people left alive. It could be said to be extremely tragic. On the 20th of July, the main forces of Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi fought with the main forces of the Flowing Wind Army in Yang County, killing more than 30,000 people, and the Flowing Wind Army continued to be defeated. On the 22nd of July, Lin Muyu led the Longdan army camp to annihilate a group of scattered soldiers of the Flowing Wind Army at the south bank of the Daojiang tributary, killing more than 4,000 people. On the 24th of July, the main forces of Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi caught up with Castor's troops again. They fought for 2 days and 2 nights at the border of Lingdong province, killing more than 10,000 people. On the 25th of July, the army of Jianghu killed more than 3,000 people. On the 26th of July, the armies of the Tianji Empire and the Qin Empire entered the territory of Lingdong province. The Longdan army camp finally caught up with the main forces of the Blood E army. They attacked from both sides with the banished army led by Ding Shi and defeated the main forces of the Blood E army, killing more than 20,000 people. On the 27th of July, the army of Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi intercepted the remaining troops of Castor outside Winter Frost City, killing more than 5,000 people. On the 28th of July, a total of 5 armies including the Longdan army camp, the Forbidden Army, and the Banished Army arrived at Winter Frost City one after another and recaptured the Dongdu. On the 3rd of August, with the mediation of Gong Shangming, the Flowing Wind Army and the Godly E Army joined forces again and fought with the main forces of the Qin Empire 300 miles north of Winter Frost City, but they were defeated. On the 17th of August, Zai and Gong Shangming officially returned to the Tianji Empire from the East Sea in search of warships, with less than 10,000 people remaining. At this point, the vigorous expedition of the Tianji Empire finally ended in failure. The 400,000 troops occupied 42 states on the territory of the Qin Empire at most, but they still failed at the last moment. The total number of soldiers who returned to the mainland was less than 10,000, and the whole country mourned. At the same time, the Battle of Cangnan Province, which lasted more than a month, finally ended. From Cangnan Province to the Dongdu, the army chased and killed more than 310,000 enemies with the momentum of conquering the country. On the 14th of September 7742 of the Empire calendar, it was autumn. The Empress Qin Yin returned to Lanyan City under the escort of nearly 100,000 soldiers. The army was majestic and stretched for 5 miles. The maple trees along the way were all red, and everything in the capital seemed to be the same as before. However, Qin Yin couldn't open her eyes to see it. Some things couldn't be reversed, just like her black eyes. This was the punishment of fate and the price of happiness. Lin Muyu, who was wearing a white robe of the imperial forest, rode on Takshu. She rode shoulder to shoulder with Chu Chu on one side of Qin Yin, while Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi rode on warhorses on the other side. As for Terralin, Lake, and the others, they had already entered the city to enjoy the prosperity of the capital. Qin Yin closed her eyes, but there was a sweet smile at the corner of her mouth. For so many years, this scene only appeared in her dreams, but now it was happening in front of her eyes. Everyone was still there, and everything was the same as before. However, the price of defeating the Tianji Empire was too high. The Qin Empire had paid an almost equal amount of losses. As a result, the Longdan Army Camp, the Imperial Guards, the God Might Battalion, the Iron Blade Army, and all the other Imperial legions added up only had a total of 100,000 soldiers. The Shattered Cauldron realm couldn't afford a second expedition by the Tianji Empire, and the Tianji Empire. Hopefully, they couldn't afford a war either. Brother Yu. Qin Yin suddenly called out softly. What's the matter, Shao Yin? I want a branch of a maple tree. Oh, it's a piece of cake. Lin Muyu picked one from the roadside and handed it to Qin Yin. Qin Yin held the branch and brought it to her nose to sniff. How is it? What's the smell? Lin Muyu asked with a smile. Qin Yin pouted and said, it's obviously a branch of a locust tree. You lied to me, Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, and the others burst into laughter. The Emperor of Qin teasing the Empress was something that everyone was looking forward to, right? Peace was like a dream that people yearned for and indulged in. Chapter 931. Lanyan City was the political and economic center of the empire. During the war, this rich city provided the front line with countless provisions, armors, weapons, and diseases. Now, the war situation had finally calmed down temporarily. The citizens of Lanyan City lined the streets to welcome the triumphant return of the Empire's army. When they saw Qin Yin in the Empress's robe, they were so excited that they couldn't speak. Finally, the era of the three kings was over, and the chaos in the world should also come to an end. Is the war over? Lin Muyu smiled bitterly. She was afraid that it was far from over. The military strength of the celestial pole continent was still several times that of the Shattered Realm. This time, the defeat of the Tianji Empire's expeditionary army might lead to a new change in the structure of the celestial pole continent. No one knew what the future would be like, so they could only be cautious and careful. Qin Yin had already changed her angel costume into the military uniform of the Empire's female general. She wore a dark blue robe embroidered with golden-purple flowers. This was the standard attire of the Empress during the war, but she kept her eyes closed and followed Lin Muyu all the way to Zetian Palace Hall. Behind the Empress, the Imperial Guards who had gone to war had already been reduced from more than 100 to at least less than 30. It was very dismal. At least, the Empire's generals were still intact. At least, Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Qin Yan, Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, Zhen Yifan, and the others were still alive. These people were the cornerstones of the empire. Qin Yin was very clear that if the soldiers were gone, they could be recruited again. If the famous generals were gone, then it was unknown when a new famous general would emerge. Zetian Palace Hall had already been cleaned in advance. It was solemn and splendid. Everyone walked slowly into the main hall without resting. There were still many things to deal with after the war, so this afternoon was bound to be very busy. Your subjects welcome your highness back to the court. Everyone knelt down one after another. Even the three kings, Lin Muyu, Qin Yan, and Feng Jixing, knelt at the front of the officials. They were distinguished lords, but in front of Qin Yin, they were still officials. Everyone, please rise. Qin Yin stood up and walked step by step to the edge of the imperial steps. She bowed to the crowd and said, I haven't been in the empire for many years. Everyone has worked hard. It is because of everyone's blood that the Qin clan can still stand on this continent. I, Qin Yin, thank you all on behalf of the Qin clan. Everyone said in unison, we have no regret serving the empire. Qin Yin looked at Lin Muyu and said, Your Highness you. Lin Muyu was stunned. Shao Yin. Qin Yin nodded and slowly knelt in front of Lin Muyu. She smiled faintly and said, Big brother you were originally a genius and could live a xiaoyao's life without caring about worldly affairs. But because of Shao Yin, big brother you has suffered so much for so many years. I know it's all my fault. It's hard for you to meet me. She was very moved. The eyelashes under her eyes trembled slightly as she knelt on the ground. Lin Muyu hurriedly walked forward and held her arms. She said softly, Shao Yin, you are crazy. You are the Empress. How can you kneel to an official? Quickly get up. Qin Yin pursed her red lips. Not only am I the Empress, I am also your younger sister. We are not monarch and official. Anyway, you can't kneel to me. Quickly get up. Okay. When Qin Yin stood up, Lin Muyu then knelt down with a peace of mind. She raised her eyes and glared at Shengguan Jingyue. She had neglected her duties as the chief female official. However, Shengguan Jingyue also looked helpless. Obviously, she did not have any cultivation. How could she stop what Qin Yin wanted to do? In the main hall, there were many officials. At least more than 200 civil and military officials followed Qin Yin back to Zetian Hall. In addition to the original high-ranking officials of Lanyan City, there were at least 300 people standing in the main hall. Feng Jixing touched his nose. He felt that Qin Yin and Lin Muyu were showing off. He said softly, I feel that you are going to be promoted. Why? Lin Muyu was stunned. Feng Jixing said, Her Highness treats you as a brother and a lover. You are the main contributor. If you don't get promoted, who else will? Get promoted to an X, Lin Muyu couldn't help but curse, we're all royal nobles now. Below monarchs are royal nobles. The three of us are only below one person, but above tens of thousands. If we go any higher, we'll be breaking the heavens. I think we're lucky to not be demoted. Oh, why? Feng Jixing was puzzled. Lin Muyu said softly, look at the many officials behind us. Many of them are princes from various places. Their troops will soon arrive at Lanyan City. It is called, rescuing the emperor, but in fact, they are taking advantage of the empire to ask for official positions. Just wait and see. Now that Xiao Yin is back, the three of us will definitely not be able to stay as princes for long. Feng Jixing frowned. You are right. I should have thought of this a long time ago. They will definitely restrict the power of the three of us. However, as long as we hold the military power in our hands, everything will be fine. The crux is that we don't have the military power in our hands. Lin Muyu said, look, my Longdan army camp and your imperial guards only have a total of less than 30,000 people. It's pitifully small. Any one of these honest princes behind us might have a military power that surpasses ours. The actual situation is that our army has been depleted in battle, while the military power of this group of people is still very intact. Feng Jixing clenched his fist. It's fine. Don't worry. We are gods, and you are a god who possesses a supreme character. If they really make things difficult for us, we'll just kill every prince that comes. What's the big deal? Then the world will probably really be in chaos. Lin Muyu glared at him. Brother Feng, you are too straightforward. You try to discuss everything with me first before making a decision. You are getting more and more cautious in doing things. It's no wonder that the former emperor took you in as his godson. Qin Yan coughed. Hey, Prince Qin and Prince Xian, it's court time now. The two of you should speak softly. Cousin and everyone else are looking at you. Cough, cough, as expected, Zhen Yifan, Su Yu, Tang Xiaoxi, and the other princes were all staring at Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing, the two greatest contributors to the empire's revival. Every one of them looked as if they had seen a ghost. Logically speaking, people who had made such immortal contributions should be steady, but these two were too careless. Qin Yin smiled and said, then, shall we begin the court discussion? Present the memorial one by one. Yes. Not long after, Zheng Yifan took a step forward with a jade tablet in his hand and said, Your Highness, this old subject has a memorial. Please speak, Lord Fan. Zheng Yifan said, the Empire's army has been continuously reduced over the years. Its military strength has been reduced from the original hundreds of thousands to the current 100,000. This old subject thinks that the new recruits recruited by the various princes are too many and difficult to train. This old subject thinks that we should draw soldiers from the armies of the various princes and replenish the Empire's regular army, restoring the army's original organizational structure as soon as possible. Qin Yin nodded in approval and said, yes, this is indeed an urgent matter. Then, what do the princes think? In the crowd, a dignified middle-aged general cupped his fists and said, Your Highness, this is not appropriate. When we recruited soldiers, it was because the country was in danger, so the people were willing to put down their farming and go to the emperor's aid. But now that the enemy has been eliminated, this subordinate thinks that these soldiers should return to farming. Otherwise, the empire will no longer have usable military rations. The person who spoke was called Zhuang Yan, the governor of Xiang City. He commanded more than 50,000 troops and was also one of the strongest princes. Zheng Yifan couldn't help but laugh and said, Lord Zhuang Yan, if all the princes left with their troops, then who will protect the imperial capital Lanyan City? Moreover, the empire's army urgently needs to replenish its military strength. All of you are also His Highness's subjects, shouldn't you serve the country? Another old general laughed. He stroked his white beard and said, "What Lord Fan said is a little biased. Although it is the duty of a minister to be loyal to the country, we have to be worthy of the emperor and worthy of the common people. We can't disregard the lives of the people for our own selfishness, am I right?" "Lord Su Changjing really knows how to talk," Zheng Fang said resentfully. Su Changjing was the biggest prince in Yunzhong province, with more than 45,000 troops. Some people said that he was the illegitimate son of the Duke of Muyun, Su Muyun, but no one knew whether it was true or not. But now that he had become famous, he couldn't be underestimated. Lin Muyu was a little angry. She turned around to look at the group of princes and said, "Military strength, are you going to give it or not? Just say it. There's no need to beat around the bush. Tell me, are you willing to contribute your military strength to the Empire's army?" He had already used the invisible elephant technique's domain. For a moment, all the princes felt as if they were in an ice cave, almost unable to breathe. "Of course, there's nothing we can't do," Su Changjing said. Zhuang Yan said, "But the provinces and prefectures do need military strength, and more than half of the soldiers have to go back to farming. Therefore, I've decided to take 10% of the military strength from each army and give it to the Ministry of War. This is more reasonable." 10%? Qin Yin frowned slightly. "What's enough for 10%? 20%. No one is allowed to disobey. Otherwise, they will be punished according to military law." "Yes." The group of princes knelt down one after another, their faces pale. Qin Yin continued, "In 7 days, all the soldiers must be reported to the Ministry of War. The Ministry of Personnel will reward the princes according to the number of troops they have handed over. The reward ceremony will be held in 7 days. "Thank you, Your Highness." The ministers cheered. Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, and Tang Xiaoxi all wore cold expressions. Obviously, the situation was no longer under Zhe Tian Palace's control. The princes had their own ideas, and the people's hearts were in chaos. Late at night, there was a sea of sparks outside Lanyan City. The troops of various princes arrived one after another. In the darkness of the night, a group of noble generals dressed in brocade entered a large tent in the chaotic camp. They were the princes with strong military strength who had been in Zhe Tian Palace during the day. Zhuang Yan, Su Changjing, Lu Xiu, and the others were among them. Chapter 933. Servants, serve the wine. This was Zhuang Yan's main tent, so naturally, he was the host. Zhuang Yan had close to 60,000 soldiers under his command. He had brought almost all the soldiers he could gather from the entire Swift White province. As the most powerful feudal lord, he seemed to have other plans. Su Changjing, Lu Xiu, and the others sat down one after another. They looked at each other, not knowing why Zhuang Yan had called them here. "The song and dance can begin now," Zhuang Yan said lightly. Inside the barracks, slender women in black cloaks walked in one by one. Under the illumination of the candlelight, their beautiful faces were extremely moving. What was unimaginable was that there were actually dozens of high-quality beauties hidden within the army. However, it seemed that these beauties were merely Zhuang Yan's exclusive pets. The dancers raised their hands and untied the cloaks in front of their chests. When the cloaks fell to the ground, everyone's eyes lit up. These dancers only wore close-fitting silk dresses, which outlined their graceful figures very enchanting. Their bodies swayed gently, and it was extremely beautiful. "Everyone, how are the beauties of my Swift White province?" Zhuang Yan suddenly asked. Su Changjing was startled, then he smiled and said, "Very good. The Swift White province is indeed a good place to nurture such stunning beauties." Zhuang Yan raised his cup and laughed, "Come, let's drink to the brim first." No one dared to disrespect Zhuang Yan. Everyone raised their cups. After 3 rounds of wine, Zhuang Yan waved his hand. Immediately, the dancers took their seats. Almost every feudal lord had a dancer beside him. Zhuang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled, "There's wine for today. Please don't let this good time go to waste." Ha ha ha. Bailing City's prefect Lu Xiyu frowned and said, "Lord Zhuang Yan, I wonder why you called us here?" Zhuang Yan said, "It's nothing important. I just wanted to invite all of you here for a banquet." "Why, Prefect Lu, do you think I have something on my mind?" Ha ha ha. Lu Xiyu cupped his fists, "No, please don't think too much. No, I really do have something on my mind." Zhuang Yan's voice suddenly became stern. Immediately, all the vassals looked over. Zhuang Yan seemed to be a bit drunk as he stood up shakily. Holding a wine cup in his hand, he said, "We are all subjects of the empire, and we have worked hard for the sake of protecting the emperor. Today, the forces gathered by all of you here are more than 10,000 men. We have dragged out an ignoble existence in our respective cities, seized cities from the enemy, and slaughtered their soldiers. However, to this day, we have not received any rewards. Why is it that Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, and the others have been promoted to nobility and given more contributions? Why? It's only because they are the direct subordinates of Qin Emperor Lin Muyu. I, Zhuang Yan, feel sorry for everyone here." Su Changjing remained silent. Lu Xiyu, on the other hand, put down his wine cup with an indignant look on his face and said, "That's right, they look down on our background and think that we are just local tyrants. The words of Zhe Tian Palace have never been in our hands. Her Highness, the Empress, has only put people like Shen Yifan, Su Yu, Lin Muyu, and Feng Jixing in important positions. She has nepotism, and vassals from other places like us will never have a chance." "That's right." A burly man stood up. He was the prefectural governor of Tianshu province, and his name was Zhou Heng. He had gathered more than 20,000 soldiers. At this moment, his face was flushed red, and he said angrily, "We also want to serve the empire, but why are we always inferior to others?" Zhuang Yan smiled faintly and said, "That's right, that's the reason. If we hand over our military power, I'm afraid that we will soon become fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Everyone, we have to think about our future and prospects." Su Changjing narrowed his eyes and asked with a smile, "Then, what exactly do you think, Sir Zhuang Yan?" Zhuang Yan laughed heartily and suddenly threw his wine cup to the ground. "The world should be governed by the people of the world. Why should one person have the final say?" Everyone was shocked. Zhuang Yan's words were no different from treason. Lu Xiyu frowned and said, "Sir Zhuang Yan, please be careful with your words. Her Highness is benevolent and has never done anything that would harm the common people. If your words are heard by the three dukes or Princess Shi, I'm afraid you will have to bear the consequences." "Why? Are you afraid, Sir Lu?" Zhuang Yan smiled and pointed at the door. "The door is over there. If Sir Lu is afraid, please leave. I, Zhuang Yan, do not keep cowards in my tent." Lu Xiyu gritted his teeth. When he came in, he saw many guards outside the tent. If he really went out, he might not have the chance to return to his tent. Zhuang Yan was a ruthless person, and there was nothing he couldn't do. "I'm not afraid, I'm just worried," Lu Xiyu said. "Don't worry. As long as the feudal vassals stick together, what can they do?" Zhuang Yan said. "Yes. Yes." Everyone agreed in unison. Su Changjing said, "Then what does Sir Zhuang Yan want?" Zhuang Yan said, "Doesn't Her Highness want 20% of our military strength? Then give it to her. After everyone returns to the camp, pick out the old, weak, and sick in the army and hand them over to the Ministry of War. These old and weak people were originally used to make up the numbers, so it doesn't matter if we give it to them. In addition, please gather your encampments and surround the Swift White Province's feudal army. Don't let them break through one by one." "Yes, that makes sense." Zhuang Yan squinted his eyes and said, in addition, we have to submit a joint memorial. Oh, what memorial? Su Changjing was stunned. Power reduction. For the stability of the people of the empire, power must be reduced. Whose power is reduced? The 3 dukes, 4 dukes, and 5 marquises. Everyone fell silent. The 3 dukes, 4 dukes, and 5 marquises were all important officials of the empire. Other than Yao Yuan, the Marquis of the Tranquil Sea, and Luo Xian, the Duke of the North, the rest had made great contributions to the empire. It wouldn't be easy to reduce their power. Zhuang Yan seemed to have seen through everyone's doubts. He smiled and said, I know that everyone thinks this is difficult, but it's actually not that difficult. We only need to submit a request. The decision can only be made by Her Highness. All we need to do is to put on a show. Only by reducing the power of the 3 dukes will we have a chance, right? Yes. Everyone nodded in unison. Lu Shiyu frowned and said, if we were to submit a memorial like this, I'm afraid it would be no different from a rebellion. After all, Her Highness the Empress is a god-state cultivator. In addition to Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, and the others, how are we mortals going to face their might? Therefore, we need someone who can make Her Highness fear and control Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing at the same time, Zhou Heng said with a smile. Oh? Zhuang Yan was stunned. There is such a person in this world? Who is Lord Zhou Heng? If I can invite this person, he will definitely be able to turn the situation around. Who is it? Qing, allow me to keep you in suspense. Ha ha ha, just wait and see. Zhou Heng said proudly, my Heaven's Pivot province is rich in resources and has many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. It will definitely broaden your horizons. 7 days later, at the barracks of the Ministry of War. Early in the morning, a group of cavalrymen flew into the barracks. It was Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing. They had brought a group of guards to select new soldiers. This was a promise that Qin Yin had made to them. She had allowed the Longdan army camp and the Imperial Army to have priority in recruiting new soldiers. The vassals outside the city had contributed 20% of their troops, which was a total of 130,000 soldiers. It should be enough. However, when Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing entered the drill ground, their faces turned ashen. The drill ground was densely packed with new soldiers, but their clothes were disheveled. Almost all of them were veterans, and many of them were crippled. They couldn't even lift a spear. What's going on? Wei Chou frowned. Their average age is enough to be my father's. Feng Jixing sneered. I knew it. These vassals won't be so kind as to hand over their elite troops. They are just putting up a front. We should have killed them back at Zetian Palace. If you kill them, Xiao Yin will have a hard time as the empress. Lin Muyu curled her lips. Then what do you think we should do? Feng Jixing was getting impatient. It seems that the vassals have already begun to form an alliance. They started moving their camps a few days ago. Now, all of them are in the southern area of Lanyan City. There are a total of 600,000 to 700,000 men and horses. The amount of rations supplied to them every day is not a small amount. If this goes on, I'm afraid that Lanyan City will be emptied by them in less than half a year. What should we do? Feng Jixing asked. We can't always be so passive and helpless, right? We don't have any soldiers now, and we can't use force against them. After all, they are all people of the empire. If we use force, I'm afraid that we will lose the support of the people. Lin Muyu pondered. How about this? Think of a way to capture the leader first. Find an opportunity to kill all the feudal lords, and their troops will naturally belong to us. What kind of opportunity? A banquet. Brother Feng, you can host a banquet in your own residence to entertain the feudal lords. Feng Jixing rolled his eyes. Are you kidding me? Where would I get a residence? It's not like you don't know that I've been freeloading in the Imperial Army's barracks ever since I returned to Lanyan City. However, it's better to host a banquet in your residence. Lin Muyu glared at him. Do you think I have a residence? Have you forgotten that I've been freeloading at Xiao Yin's place for 7 or 8 days? Then what should we do? Let Duke Fan host. The Divine Marquis's residence is still very big. That's good too. We'll discuss it with Duke Fan. Okay. Zheng Yifan, who was drinking his morning tea, suddenly sneezed. What's wrong, father? Zheng Fang asked. Zheng Yifan rubbed his nose and said, I have a feeling that something bad is coming. Oh, what could it be? A guard's voice came from outside the door. Duke Fan, Prince Qin, Prince Xian, and Duke Wei are here. Sure enough, something bad is coming. Zheng Yifan squinted his eyes and smiled. These people are definitely not good. Zheng Fang. 10 minutes later, Zheng Yifan's face was ashen after listening to Lin Muyu's words. Duke Fan, please make a decision with benevolence and justice. Lin Muyu said, Brother Feng and I don't have a decent residence in Lanyan City. Your Divine Marquis's residence is so spacious. Moreover, with your reputation, the feudal lords will definitely come. Zheng Yifan took a deep breath. When will the banquet be held? 3 days later. Then, all right. Zheng Yifan raised his head and looked at Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing. Does Her Highness know about this? I don't know. The two of you are really daring. Duke Fan is too kind. Chapter 934. However, before Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu had even stepped out of the door, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard from outside. A guard from the Divine Marquis residence said respectfully, Duke Fan, Sir Zhuang Yan has sent someone to deliver an invitation. He said that there will be a banquet at the Drunken Immortal restaurant tomorrow afternoon, and Duke Fan is invited. The Drunken Immortal restaurant? Zheng Yifan frowned and said, Call him in. Yes. The person sent by Zhuang Yan did not look like a soldier, but more like a businessman. He was fat and had a mustache. When he saw Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing, he immediately smiled and said, So your highnesses are here too, that's even better. Both of you are also invited to the Drunken Immortal restaurant tomorrow afternoon. This is Sir Zhuang Yan's invitation. He took out 4 invitation cards at once. Not only were Zheng Yifan, Lin Muyu, and Feng Jixing invited, even Wei Chou was included. What is Sir Zhuang Yan planning to do? Lin Muyu asked. The messenger shook his head and said, This lowly one is just a messenger. As for the details, this lowly one doesn't know. However, Lord Zhuang Yan said that tomorrow at noon, there will be an earth-shattering announcement at the Drunken Immortal Inn. I hope that the 2 princes, Duke Fan, and Minister Wei will not miss it. Who else did he invite? Feng Jixing asked. The 3 highnesses, the 3 dukes and many marquises have been invited. In addition, the Ministry of War, Ministry of Manpower, Ministry of Justice, Divine Temple and Elixir Department of Lanyan City have also been invited. There are about 100 people in total. Alright, that's all. You can go now. Tell Zhuang Yan that we will be there on time tomorrow. Yes, then I'll take my leave. After the messenger left, the people in the living room frowned. His movements are quite fast. We didn't even have time to make a move before he made the first move, Lin Muyu said lightly. Tomorrow's lunch at the Drunken Immortal restaurant won't be that delicious. Zheng Yifan nodded. A few days ago, I heard that Zhuang Yan had also invited the various feudal princes to a banquet. Lu Xiu, Su Changjing, Zhou Heng, Zhao Xinpei, Yang Zhong, and the other feudal princes were all present. The imperial army only has 100,000 troops, but the hundreds of feudal princes have 6 or 7 times more troops than us. They can already be considered to have the power to decide life and death. As he spoke, Zheng Yifan sat down and sighed. Originally, we could enjoy peace after defeating the celestial pole continent, but I didn't expect that the Empire's chaos had only just begun. Feng Jixing said, Zhuang Yan and the others don't have good intentions. In my opinion, we should cut the Gordian knot and kill the feudal prince's leaders, ending all troubles once and for all. Your Highness Prince Xian, times have changed. It's no longer the time for you to kill hundreds of generals in the Seven Seas. Back then, the main forces of the Empire's army still existed and Tang Lan was still around, so they still had some reservations. But now, the chaos in the feudal vassal states' armies is no longer something that people like Tang Lu can compare to. Zhuang Yan, Su Changjing, and Lu Xiu. Which one of them isn't a sly old fox? If we really kill them with our status as Divine Realm experts, their subordinates will also lead their armies to attack Lanyan City. Lin Muyu said, we'll talk about it after we go to the Drunken Immortal restaurant tomorrow afternoon. Emicham, Feng Jixing nodded. Lin Muyu then looked at Wei Chou and said, deploy 2,000 people from the Longdan army camp to guard the surroundings of the Drunken Immortal restaurant. If anything really goes wrong, we'd rather kill the innocent than let them off. Don't leave any feudal princes alive. Wei Chou cupped his fists. Yes, I understand. Feng Jixing muttered, this matter. Should we tell Her Highness Yin and Princess Shi? The two of them have just been freed from the war. It's better not to tell them. We'll make the decision ourselves. I think Xiao Yin and Xiao Shi won't blame us. All right. The next day, at noon, there were no other customers in the Drunken Immortal restaurant on Tongtian Street. The entire place was under martial law by the guards of the feudal prince's armies. However, the streets outside the Drunken Immortal restaurant were tightly guarded by the armored cavalry of the Longdan army camp. If there were any disturbances, the hundreds of guards of the feudal prince's armies naturally wouldn't be a match for the battle-hardened elites of the Longdan army camp. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing arrived at the Drunken Immortal restaurant together. When the two of them entered, they discovered that Qin Yan, Su Yu, and Zheng Yifan were already there. The huge Drunken Immortal restaurant had already been booked by Zhuang Yan today. There was no one else. All the guests were important ministers of the imperial court. The Ministry of War and the Ministry of Justice all came forward to pay their respects. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing each nodded their heads in return. In reality, with their status, there was no need for them to do so. Not long after, Zhuang Yan, Lu Xiu, and the rest walked out from inside. Zhuang Yan laughed heartily and knelt down, saying, this general pays his respects to the three highnesses. It is the honor of us feudal princes that the three highnesses are willing to give us face. Lord Zhuang need not be so courteous. Rise, Lin Muyu said. Then, everyone, please take your seats. Zhuang Yan nodded his head with a smile. He led Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Qin Yan, and the rest straight to a large table in the center. The guests at this table were all first rank. Aside from the three princes and three dukes, there were also the Minister of War, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Revenue, and so on. Every single one of them was a heavyweight who could make Lanyan City tremble with a stomp of their feet. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing remained silent. There was no such thing as a good banquet. Today was destined to be a bad day. Delicious delicacies quickly filled the table, and the aroma of wine filled the air. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing had been away from home for many years, so they never had the chance to taste the delicacies of the Drunken Immortal restaurant. Today, they couldn't help but be tempted, but they still had to endure it. After all, something big was definitely going to happen today. I wonder why Lord Zhuang has set up a banquet to entertain us today. Zhuang Yifan squinted his eyes and asked with a smile. Zhuang Yan smiled slightly and said, everyone here is the cornerstone of the empire. The three princes rule the world, the four dukes rule the world, and the 5 dukes guard the 4 directions. The Ministry of War and the Ministry of Revenue provide the most solid logistical support for the Empire's army. Only by working together can we drive away the powerful enemy. Compared to everyone here, we feudal princes who recruit our own troops simply have no qualifications to speak of. However, the troops in our hands only recognize our faces, so, today, the purpose of this zhuang hosting this banquet is to familiarize ourselves with each other, so that we can work together in the future and make preparations for our loyalty to the Empire. His loyal and courageous appearance made it hard for anyone to doubt him. Lin Muyu's face was expressionless. After so many years, she could tell at a glance that Zhuang Yan was only a scheming villain. He was still thousands of miles away from being a loyal official. Thus, Lin Muyu said, "When will the banquet start?" "I'm hungry." Your Highness Prince Qin, please wait a moment." Zhuang Yan laughed and said, "Today, other than everyone here, this general has also invited a highly respected elder of the Empire's royal family. With him here, the Empire can truly be at peace for a long time." "Oh?" Lin Muyu was a little displeased and said, "Who is this person? How can he have such a big tone? We found this person in Heaven's Pivot Province. He has already concealed his identity for many years, escaping from Fairy Lake to live in the northeast of Heaven's Pivot Province, living like a hunter. I think Your Highness Prince Zhong should be quite familiar with him." Zhuang Yan looked deeply at Qin Yan. Qin Yan was slightly stunned. What am I familiar with? Call him over first." "All right." Zhuang Yan clapped his hands and said, "Men, invite His Highness in." Immediately, the curtains at the back of the hall were pulled open. An old man with grizzled hair and beard walked over under the support of 2 guards. His spirit was still considered hale and hearty, but his appearance was incomparably aged. Everyone stared dumbfounded with their mouths agape, feeling that he was somewhat familiar. Even Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing were dumbfounded. They seemed to have seen this person before somewhere, but they could not quite remember. Among the crowd, only Qin Yan slowly stood up and walked over in a daze, saying in a trembling voice, "Royal Father, is that you?" "Royal Father." The arrival was precisely Prince Ji Ning, Qin Quan. Qin Jin, Qin Yi's younger brother. Qin Quan's old tears flowed down, his palm trembling as he supported Qin Yan's arm. Yan. My Yan has grown up. Father misses you and your brother every day. Today, I can finally see you guys." Qin Yan lost his voice and cried bitterly, "Royal Father, for so many years, we already thought that you were already dead. Why would you appear here today?" Qin Shao said, "Back then, second brother did not listen to my advice and killed royal brother, fratricidal. But he did not want to kill me. He just sent someone to a faraway place on a horse alone. He said before that as long as I concealed my identity, he would not pursue it. Otherwise, he would definitely send people to hunt me down. For so many years, I've always been hiding deep in the mountains without anyone knowing." Yan, your brother, Qin Yan's tears flowed, "My brother, he already died for the country during the Lanyan City Rebellion 11 years ago." My Lei, Qin Quan's entire body trembled. Only when he got this news from Qin Yan's mouth did he truly feel the pain of losing a loved one. Zhuang Yan walked forward and supported Qin Quan, saying, "Your Highness, please take a seat. Commander Qin Lei sacrificed his life for the country. He is the pride of the Empire. You should be happy for him." Qin Shao nodded and took a seat. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing stood up at the same time and said respectfully, "Greetings, Your Highness Prince Yuning. I know you too." Qin Quan said faintly, "You are Lin Muyu, royal brother's adopted son, and you are Feng Jixing, the commander of the imperial army." "That's right. You two are already dukes now." Qin Quan looked at their cloaks and naturally knew their identities. Su'er said, "Your Highness Prince Yuning, you has been conferred the title of Qin King, Feng Jixing has been conferred the title of Xian King, and your son Qin Yan has been conferred the title of Zhong King. For so many years, it was the three of them who have been ruling the world of Great Qin. I know all of it, Feng Jixing smiled. Your Highness Prince Yuning is Her Highness Empress's uncle. It's great that you can return safe and sound. The Empire has gained another capable official, it's a blessing. Why don't Your Highness be escorted by us to Zhe Tian Palace to see Her Highness Empress? Qin Quan was startled and didn't say anything. Instead, Zhuang Yan smiled. Your Highness Prince Yuning must be tired from the journey. Don't rush to see Her Highness Empress for now. Why don't you wait for the morning court meeting? Feng Jixing said coldly, since when did a small governor of Xiang City like you have the right to decide Prince Yuning's matters? His words were filled with murderous intent, and Zhuang Yan couldn't help but turn pale. Lin Muyu quickly pressed her hand on Feng Jixing's wrist and said, Brother Feng, let's wait for Prince Yuning's opinion first. Qin Quan coughed violently and said, then, tomorrow morning. We're not in a hurry anyway. I've been traveling in the mountains for so many years, and I've heard a lot of things. I can write a memorial to Her Highness Empress. Lin Muyu nodded, okay. Feng Jixing glared at Lin Muyu, seemingly dissatisfied. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu's voice passed into Feng Jixing's ears like a silk thread. I know Zhuang Yan wants to control us through Prince Yuning, but we can't act rashly. After all, we have to show respect to Prince Yuning, the Emperor's uncle, and even more so to Yan. He just learned that his father is still alive. How can we pour cold water on him now? Feng Jixing's anger gradually subsided. He nodded and didn't say anything more. He started to eat. Chapter 935. After the luncheon, Qin Yan brought Qin Lian back to Prince Yuning's residence. Meanwhile, Zhuang Yan brought nearly 5,000 people to protect the residence. They surrounded it heavily as if not even a fly could fly in. Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Wei Chou, and Su Yu escorted them to the outside of the residence. The four of them paced back and forth on their horses. I still want to go in and ask Prince Yuning, Feng Jixing said. Lin Muyu nodded. Me too. Su'er said, that's true. Prince Yuning didn't come earlier or later, but at this time. In my opinion, Zhuang Yan doesn't have any good intentions. It's as if he's holding Prince Yuning hostage. Not necessarily, but... Lin Muyu frowned. But it does seem abnormal. Logically speaking, Zhuang Yan can't change the situation of the Marquis's army being reduced even if he finds Prince Yuning. Does he really want to betray the country? Feng Jixing said, don't talk about it. We'll know once we break the void and ask. Yes. The guards outside the door prevented others from entering Prince Yuning's residence, but they couldn't stop two God State experts. Pa! Purple lightning flashed in the side hall of the residence. Two figures flashed in. It was Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu. At this moment, Qin Lian held a teacup in her hand. She slowly raised her head and said, Your Highnesses, if you want to come in, come in. Why do you have to do this? Please forgive us, Your Highness. Lin Muyu cupped her fists and said, Zhuang Yan's people outside the door won't let us in. Qin Lian frowned. Why is it like this? Feng Jixing was impatient. He said, Your Highness, please tell us the truth. What did Zhuang Yan say to you? This time, he invited you back from Tianshu province. Something big must have happened, right? Qin Lian leisurely took a sip of tea and said, Do you really want to know? Yes. Okay, there's no harm in telling you. Qin Kong smiled faintly and said, This time, a total of 174 feudal vassals have joined forces to request the Empress to reduce her power. Power reduction? Lin Muyu was stunned. That's right. Qin Shao said, Zhuang Yan proposed a strategy to rule the country, called The People of the World Rule the World Together. He asked the empire to return power to the world. The first step is to reduce power and remove all the titles of Duke, Marquis, and Earl. The salaries of these titles are too much, burdening the people of the world. The power of these titles is too great, making the people of the world feel unfair. From now on, I'm afraid the Great Qin will only have one Royal Highness, the Empress. There will no longer be the 3 dukes and 5 marquises. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing were stunned. Qin Kong smiled. Why? Are the 2 of you reluctant to give up your fame and fortune? Of course I'm willing. Lin Muyu smiled brightly. It's just that I don't know what Zhuang Yan and the others want to do. What happens after we lose our power? After we lose our titles, who will rule the world? Congress. Qin Shao said, this is their initial plan. They will set up a huge conference system, make laws, and rule the country by law. Her Royal Highness will no longer be the highest authority. All major decisions will have to be discussed by the Congress before they can be passed. Feng Jixing was a little annoyed. Is this treason? A bunch of B** starts, how dare they dismiss Her Royal Highness? This is simply wishful thinking. I can kill them all with my 2 knives. Qin Kong smiled. His Royal Highness Prince Xian is a god. Although he won't be restricted by many things in the mortal world, as long as Prince Xian kills people, it will be equivalent to giving the Marquis army a reason to attack Lanyan City. With 700,000 Marquis army soldiers, can the 30,000 Longdan army camp and Imperial guards in Lanyan City stop them? You, say something. Feng Jixing said. Lin Muyu stood there as if she had been petrified. A few words flew in her mind. They were about to set up a congress. Was this considered progress for historical civilization or a regression? From the perspective of civilization, he should support the establishment of a congress and the establishment of a constitutional state. However, from his own perspective, how could he let those despicable people deprive Qin Yin's legitimate heir of the throne? Now, there were 2 choices in front of Lin Muyu. One was to use Feng Jixing's method and kill the leaders of the Marquis army in a thunderous manner. Then, they would start a war and forcefully conquer the 700,000 troops outside the city. However, the result would be the end of the empire. There wouldn't be any more troops. As long as the celestial pole continent sent another group of elite troops over, the empire would no longer have any troops to resist. The second choice was to comply with their decision, set up a congress, remove the Marquis army, and establish a constitutional state. Xiao Yin's power will be disintegrated one by one, right? Lin Muyu asked. Qin Shao nodded. Yes, they will gradually take control of the Congress and hold real power. The final result is that Her Highness will lose the throne and become a commoner. Old Highness, as Xiao Yin's uncle and the 3rd brother of the late Emperor Qin Jin, are you willing to watch the Qin Empire be controlled by others? Lin Muyu looked deeply at Qin Lian. Qin Lian's eyes were a little cloudy. She sighed and said, I'm already old. I don't know how many more years I can live. I'm already very satisfied to be able to see Yen. Do you want me to see the Qin Empire fall apart, you? If we comply with the will of Zhuang Yan and the other Marquis, the empire can still protect itself. If we don't comply, I'm afraid the Qin Empire will fall apart in 3 years. So be it. It's fine if I don't become the Qin Emperor, Lin Muyu said dejectedly. Feng Jixing was stunned. Are you just going to let yourself be bound? No, I'm the Divine King. Who dares to bind me? Lin Muyu smiled faintly and said, I just don't want Xiao Yin and myself to be bound to this plane for the rest of our lives. I have a bigger goal. Brother Feng, you're also a god. Don't you want to see the outside world? Do you want to be Prince Xian in the Shattered Cauldron realm for the rest of your life? Feng Jixing touched his nose. Look at what you're saying. You have Her Highness Yin and Princess Shi to play in the outside world. What about me? I'm all alone. Will you bring me along? Of course, of course. You're my big brother. All right then. Feng Jixing said unhurriedly, Your Highness, since you want to reduce my authority, just do it. I, Feng Jixing, will not stop you. However, what I mean is that even if a parliament is established, the position of the Empress as the supreme ruler must be maintained. At least, it must be maintained before Her Highness Yin voluntarily abdicates. Lin Muyu also smiled faintly. If anyone wants to drag Xiao Yin down from the throne, I'll chop his head off immediately. Your Highness, please help us pass this message to Zhuang Yan and the other feudal vassals. If they want to reduce their authority and establish a parliament, they must hand over the military power of 300,000 elite soldiers for the various armies of the empire to choose from. In addition, even if a parliament is established, Xiao Yin must have the final veto power. This is my only request. If this cannot be negotiated, I swear that I'll single-handedly wipe out the entire family of all feudal vassals. If they don't believe me, they can try. Qin Kong was stunned. He could tell that Lin Muyu was not joking, and he indeed had the ability to do so. Thus, he nodded and said, I'll pass this message. It's rare that you and General Feng both have the demeanor of a gentleman. Otherwise, the world would definitely be in chaos. Lin Muyu's heart was heavy. I'm afraid that from now on, Great Qin will enter a civilized era of constitutional monarchy. Constitutional monarchy? Feng Jixing and Qin Kong asked together in shock. It was not strange that they did not understand this kind of civilization. The next day, during the morning assembly, the sun rose high in the sky, and the ministers all came to court. Each of them wore a smile on their faces, but each had their own thoughts. Some already knew that the empire was about to change, while others were still in the dark. In the main hall, Qin Yin, wearing the empress's robe, sat on the throne accompanied by Terralin and Tang Xiaoxi. She had also learned about what had happened in the parliament. Lin Muyu had come last night. Regarding this matter, Qin Yin was surprisingly calm. She had already seen through it a lot, and she did not even have the slightest nostalgia for the throne. Qin Kong walked to the front with the scroll in his trembling hand. He cupped his fists and bowed to Qin Yin, then turned around and opened the scroll. In a clear voice, he said, Since ancient times, things in the world will change when they are poor, and change will lead to change. The change in the imperial power lies in the hearts of the people. Her Highness is benevolent and has decided to remove all the titles of kings, dukes, marquises, and earls. All officials will be divided according to their ranks. In addition, a parliament will be established. Within 7 days, the first set of Great Qin's constitution will be drawn up. The country will be governed by this constitution, and the title of empress will be preserved. All major decisions must first be passed through the parliament and then the empress. Otherwise, they will not be implemented. Zhuang Yan could not help but frown. This last sentence seemed to have been added by Qin Kong himself. Motherf ***, that old bastard. He could not help but curse. But not far away, Qin Yan's gaze shot over like a sharp sword, causing Zhuang Yan to tremble uncontrollably. Qin Yin stood up and said, approved. I just don't know, how does Uncle plan to select the members of this parliament? Under the king's steps, a group of dukes all knelt on the ground and said in unison, We recommend His Highness Prince Ji Ning to be the president of the parliament. He will oversee everything, including the selection of members of the parliament. Qin Yin frowned and said, Other than the president, what other positions have been established by the parliament? 10 executive officers of the parliament, second only to the president, Qin Xiao said. That's good. Qin Yin waved her hand and said, I will personally choose 5 of these 10 executive officers, Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Su Yu, Tang Xiaoxi, and Wei Chou. It's decided. Qin Shao froze. What, can't I? Qin Yin slowly opened her flaming eyes and restrained most of her divine power, but it was still very hot. She said, Dukes, do you think my proposal is feasible? This was the first time Qin Yin referred to herself as the Emperor and showed her authority. All the dukes knelt at almost the same time. Yes, it's feasible. We will obey your highness' order. The corner of Lin Muyu's mouth rose. As expected, Qin Yin easily did it. As long as her 5 people entered the parliament and occupied half of the 10 executive officers, the overall situation would not be affected by others. And what Lin Muyu wanted was just for the dukes to hand over half of their military power. As long as she had troops in her hands, there was no need to fear that this parliament would break the heavens. After that, the entire afternoon's discussion became simple. The personnel of the parliament was confirmed. Other than Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, and the other 5 executive officers, Zhuang Yan, Lu Xiu, Su Changjing, Zhou Heng, and Yang Zhong occupied the remaining 5 positions. The identities of 214 members of the parliament were quickly confirmed. Most of them were dukes. The constitutional monarchy was slowly being implemented. Of course, how many people could clearly see the undercurrents flowing under the surface? Chapter 936. Holding the golden token in their hands, Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, and Qin Yan knelt on one knee and raised the token of Emperor Qin, token of Emperor Xian, and token of Emperor Loyalty. Meanwhile, Shengguan Jingyue collected them one by one and put them on the maid's tray. She said, Your Highness, the token of Emperor Qin, token of Emperor Xian, and token of Emperor Loyalty have been collected. Qin Yin closed her eyes and said softly, Pass down my order. Reinstate Lin Muyu as the commander of the Longdan army camp, reinstate Feng Jixing as the commander of the Imperial Guards, and promote Qin Yan as the Grand Deacon of the Sanctum. Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, and the others will be given other important positions and arrangements. Zhuang Yan was taken aback. He glanced at the feudal vassals behind him. Immediately, Su Changjing cupped his fists and said, Your Highness, please reconsider. The position of the commander of the Imperial main army is related to the overall situation. We need to be more cautious. Since the Congress has been established, the positions of the commanders of the Longdan army camp and the Imperial Guards should be reappointed. The decision should be made by all the members of the Congress. Please consider it, Your Highness. Qin Yin's face was cold. She said indifferently, The Longdan army camp is the army that I rely on the most. The Imperial Guards are my guards that protect the Imperial capital. Why can't I decide on these 2 armies? How can I allow the Congress to intervene? Lin Muyu also sneered, Su Changjing, aren't you stretching your hands a little too far as the Grand Deacon? The Longdan army camp is my army. Everyone is my people. The future of the Longdan army camp can only be decided by me. Who do you think you are? Lin Muyu, you. Su Changjing was so angry that he was trembling. Don't forget that you are no longer the king of Qin. As one of the Grand Deacons of the Congress, is this what you should say? You dare to open a dye house just because I show you some color? The Xianyuan sword in Lin Muyu's hand had already started humming and shining with golden light. Feng Jixing hurriedly stopped the fight. He grabbed Lin Muyu's wrist that was holding the sword and said to Su Changjing, Lord Su, don't continue to anger Commander Yu. Don't forget that Commander Yu is the greatest contributor in defeating the Tianji Empire and the Blackstone Empire and recovering half of the Qin Empire. Moreover, Commander Yu is a god of the mortal world, and you are just a mortal. You can kill you as if you were an ant. Commander Yu is you. You. Although he was trying to stop the fight, in fact, every word he said was like a sword stabbing into Su Changjing's heart. Lin Muyu did not pay attention to Zhuang Yan and Su Changjing. She just cupped her hands respectfully and said to Qin Yin, Your Highness, since the feudal princes have agreed to allocate half of their troops to replenish the armies of the empire, we should do it immediately. The Longdan army camp and the imperial army were originally formed with 100,000 people. I request Your Highness to approve that General Feng and I will personally go to the feudal prince's troops to select. Select? Zhuang Yan was stunned. Why? Can't I? Lin Muyu raised her eyebrows and said, this is what Lord Zhuang Yan has promised. If you go back on your word, the Congress will be cancelled immediately. You will all go back to your respective cities and wait for Your Highness' reward. This, Zhuang Yan looked helpless and said, but if we only select our troops, won't the rest be a group of old, weak, sick, and disabled people? Then what does Lord Zhuang want? The soldiers of our army are as close as brothers. All the centurions, chiliarchs, and captaincy must appoint their own brothers. Otherwise, their combat power will be greatly reduced. Please consider this, Commander Yu. Sure. Lin Muyu nodded and said, after the court meeting, I will send someone to Lord Zhuang Yan's camp to select 10,000 people to replenish the Longdan army camp. Lord Zhuang Yan, please send someone back to inform all the soldiers to wait for the selection in their respective camps' drill grounds. Feng Jixing said, oh right, I also want 10,000 people. Also, I want 10,000 people from Lord Su Changjing's and Lord Lu Shiyu's armies. I hope you can start preparing immediately. Lu Shiyu and Su Changjing's faces were ashen. But this was the price they had to pay. The establishment of the Congress was a compromise and a deal. If they wanted to get rid of their status as feudal princes and enter the imperial court, they had to pay a price. Qin Yin pursed her red lips and said, let's do it this way. Where is the Ministry of War? The Minister of War hurriedly stepped forward and said respectfully, Your Highness, what orders do you have for me? Send someone to cast a new marshal's seal immediately. Engrave Lin Muyu's name on it. From today onwards, Lin Muyu will carry the marshal's seal when not in battle. During wartime, we will discuss further. Lin Muyu has the supreme authority to control the entire army of the empire. Regardless of whether it is the regular army or the feudal prince's army, they must obey Lin Muyu's orders. That's all. Qin Yin's words made the feudal princes' faces turn green and purple. Everyone felt as though they had gone for wool and come home shorn. However, they couldn't disobey her. After all, the Congress had yet to mature, and many powers had to be fought for step by step. At this moment, the Empress's orders were above all else, and no one could disobey her. Feng Jixing smiled and said, Congratulations, you. Even though you have been removed from the title of King Qin, you have become the marshal. Lin Muyu couldn't express her bitterness and said, if you want to be the marshal, you can do it. I'm not too interested. I don't want to wrangle with these petty officials who haggle over minor matters. Feng Jixing's voice wasn't soft, and the feudal princes were enraged when they heard it. His meaning was self-evident. He was saying that the feudal princes were just some powerful and nouveau riche from small places. They couldn't even get on the stage of the imperial capital. This was simply a face-slapping. At this moment, Xiang Yu cupped his fists and said, Your Highness, Qin Yin smiled faintly and said, General Xiang Yu, you don't have to worry. Mingshan province is located at the southern border and needs to be heavily guarded. Naturally, a new army will be established, and you will be the commander of this army. Yes, thank you for your concern for the southern provinces, Your Highness. Zhuang Yan continued, Your Highness, I have something to say. Go ahead, Lord Zhuang. Since the Congress has been established, the members of the Congress will need a place to stay. In addition, the meeting hall must be worthy of the status of the Congress, so I suggest that half of the Zetian Palace be divided to be the residence of the members of the Congress. In addition, the main hall of the Zetian Palace can be remodeled into the Congress Hall. What does Your Highness think? What did you say? Lin Muyu's gaze instantly turned cold and she said indifferently, the Zetian Palace is the residence that the late Emperor, Qin Jin, left for Shaoyin. Are you thinking of stealing it? I'm not stealing, I'm just stating the facts. I hope that Lin General can understand. Zhuang Yan was rather capable of keeping his composure. Lin Muyu waved her hand. Don't even think about it. The Zetian Palace is Xiaoyin's home. No one should even think about getting their hands on it. You'd better find another place to settle down. Don't tell me that the imperial capital can't accommodate 200 people like you. Feng Jixing nodded and said, the Zetian Palace is the symbol of the great Qin. No one can even think of touching it. Zhuang Yan furrowed his brows and remained silent. At this moment, Qin Lian cupped her fists and said, Your Highness, this old subject has a suggestion. Qin Yi nodded happily and said, Please speak, Imperial Uncle. This old subject's residence is about 1/3 the size of the Zetian Palace. It's quite spacious. The reception hall can accommodate 200 people after some expansion. In addition, there are hundreds of wing rooms in the backyard. I think it should be enough to accommodate all the members of the Congress. As long as the Ministry of Revenue allocates a small amount of funds, the Congress can be built. Is Imperial Uncle really willing to give up the Zetian Palace? Yes. Good. Permission granted. Thank you for your grace, Your Highness. By the time the court meeting ended, it was already close to dusk. The establishment of the Congress was basically completed. The next step was to establish the first constitution based on the laws of the Great Qin. Everyone walked out of the Zetian Palace. Zhuang Yan, Lu Xiu, and the other feudal vassals crowded around Qin Lian. To them, Qin Lian was an invincible token. With Qin Lian around, whether it was Qin Yin or Lin Muyu, they would have to give face to the Congress. Moreover, with Qin Lian around, these feudal vassals would be able to escape death no matter how outrageous they were. Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, and the rest of the people walked down the stairs silently. However, Qin Lian brought everyone forward and said, Lin General. Oh. Lin Muyu looked up at him and smiled faintly. Oh, it's you, Chief. Qin Lian sighed and hesitated to speak. After a few seconds, he said, This isn't what I truly want. I hope that Lin General can understand. As for the affairs of the Congress, I hope that Lin General can pay more attention to them. Otherwise, I won't be able to handle it alone. Don't worry, Chief. At least Zhuang Yan, Lu Xiu, Su Changjing, and the other wardens will help you. My task is to manage the military affairs. In that case. Qin Lian smiled. Is Lin General planning to separate from me, who is in charge of government affairs and military affairs? If Chief thinks so, so be it. Lin Muyu cupped her fists and smiled. Actually, I still have to call you uncle. It's getting late, and I have to bring people to the feudal vassal army to select soldiers. Chief, go back and rest early. Ah Yan, take good care of Chief, understand? Qin Yan was depressed for the entire afternoon. He couldn't help but be dragged into the dispute between the Congress and the Empress. On one side was his father, and on the other side was his cousin and brother. He couldn't control himself and could only cup his fists and said, Don't worry, big brother. You have to, be careful too. Don't worry. We're going. Okay. Lin Muyu looked at Qin Lian again and cupped her fists respectfully. Chief, I'll take my leave. Lin General, have a safe trip. I won't send you off. The two of them turned and went in two different directions. At the entrance of the main hall, Qin Yin was dressed in a long robe with Tang Xiaoxi, Terralin, and the others beside her. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at the backs of Lin Muyu and Qin Lian with a pair of eyes that were mixed with golden flames. Unknowingly, the power of the nation seemed to have become a contest between Lin Muyu and Qin Lian. Who would have thought that the situation would develop to this point? Terolin's beautiful eyes seemed to see through everything. She said, Lin Muyu has the disposition of a sovereign and is also a deity king. In addition, he has the Xianyuan sword. As long as he wants to, he can destroy the entire Congress by himself. I really don't know why he has to endure this. Qin Yin bit her red lips and said, it's precisely because he didn't do this that people respect him, love him, regard him as a hero, and respect him as a commander. As for the 40 Kiliarchs, 80 lieutenants, and 400 centurions, almost none of them are loyal to the Longdan army camp. Naturally, they won't be loyal. Most of them are the feudal lord's men. Many of them are even the feudal lord's brothers. Zhuang Yan, Su Changjing, and the others are here to divide the Longdan army camp's cohesion. Then what should we do? Asked Su Jiantao with a frown. It's simple. Lin Muyu spread out the list of officers of the Longdan army camp in front of her and said, our Longdan army camp used to have 200,000 people. We were invincible when we fought in the south and the north. However, after encountering the strong army of the Tianji Empire, our numbers kept decreasing. Now we only have more than 10,000 people. However, each of these 10,000 people is an elite soldier. Wei Chou, draw up a list. Each veteran general of the Longdan army camp will be promoted by one level. The centurions will be promoted to Kiliarchs, and the Kiliarchs will be promoted to captaincy. Yes, this subordinate understands. In addition, all the new recruits of the 7 groups will be divided into 5 10,000-man battalions. Starting from the centurions, all of them will be the original generals of the Longdan army camp. I only want the new recruits from the feudal lords' armies. They are like unpolished jade waiting for us to carve. As for those generals, they are all old foxes. We don't need them. Situ-sen was stunned. Then how should we deal with these old foxes? Most of them are relatives of the feudal lords. If we don't deal with them properly, I'm afraid the conflict between our military and the Congress will further deepen. Find a suitable excuse. Lin Muyu thought for a while and said, don't rush to remove them from their positions. We will start the training tomorrow. These feudal lords and generals don't know the rules of the Longdan army camp. They are used to being unbridled and undisciplined. Arrest them one by one. If they violate the military rules of the empire, no matter how big or small, they will be removed from their positions directly and be sent back to their original army. This way, they will not lose their mouths and the Congress will not have a chance to take advantage of them. Situ-sen smiled. Marshal Lin is wise. I think, you're the one who's really a wily old fox. You're simply too scheming. Lin Muyu glared at him and said, don't flatter me. Hurry up and get to work. Tomorrow, the Congress will be drafting the Constitution. I will be there to keep an eye on it. The Longdan army camp will depend on you. How many elite soldiers we can bring out depends on you. Do you understand? Yes, we will not let Lin General down. Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, Situ-sen, Situ-shui, Fengshi, and the other generals knelt on one knee. As long as Lin Muyu was there, the soul of the Longdan army camp would be there. As long as these generals were there, the bones of the Longdan army camp would be there. Lin Muyu was now just waiting for the Longdan army camp to become an invincible force again. In this way, they would no longer be controlled by the feudal lords' armies. After all, the one with the strongest fist would have the most weight. This principle had never changed since ancient times. The next day, the golden horizontal board of Prince Yuning's mansion had been replaced by the Parliament House. Countless craftsmen came and went. The reconstruction work was in full swing. The meeting hall could not accommodate 200 people. It could only accommodate 100 people. The other 100 members of the Congress were all holding a meeting outside the hall. They could not even hear the content of the meeting clearly. It was drizzling, but none of the members were willing to leave. They held the meeting in the rain. Obviously, they were not willing to give up this opportunity to rise to the top of the empire. Once they lost this opportunity, they did not know when they would get it again. In the morning, the rudimentary constitution of the empire was finalized. The most important part was about the division of fiefs and the reward of new titles. Around the round table, the 10 deacons of the Congress listened quietly. Lin Muyu was whispering to Tang Xiaoxi. He was actually not interested in the specific constitution of the Congress. Naturally, Tang Xiaoxi was even less interested. However, when the topic of fiefs was mentioned, the two of them immediately listened carefully. After all, this would affect the future of the empire. It could not be ignored. Zhuang Yan slapped the table and said, "As for fiefs, we will still follow the principle of the people ruling the world together. I think the smaller the fiefs, the better. It is very important to redivide the land. All the lands of the nobles must be divided. Half of it will be given to the Congress. The Congress will hire farmers to farm and collect a certain amount of rent. The rent will be used to support the Congress." No. Feng Jixing frowned and said, "In this way, the entire Congress will become a big noble family, the biggest vassal of the empire. How can they talk about the people ruling the world together? They are obviously abusing their power for personal gain." Zhuang Yan's face was a bit ugly. Obviously, Feng Jixing was right. Who in the Congress would really want the people to rule the world together? It was just a nice way to put it. In fact, they just wanted to get more of the cake for themselves. Lu Xiyu said, "General, what do you think?" Qin Shao said, "Dividing half of the land of the nobles to the Congress is indeed a bit too much. How about dividing 30%? At this time, Lin Muyu said, "I think dividing 10% is at most. How can the Congress have so many people to feed? Giving more benefits to the farmers will make them more active. It is more important to hand over the grain to the various states and counties and turn it into military food." Qin Shao laughed. "Lin General is always the most concerned about military affairs." Lin Muyu said seriously, "Although the Tianji Empire and the Blackstone Empire were defeated, it doesn't mean they won't come again. On the contrary, I think if we continue to waste time on this kind of division of land, the more likely the celestial pole continent will launch the next attack." Zhuang Yan smiled and said, "The 400,000 troops of the Tianji Empire were almost wiped out by us. The 300,000 troops of the Blackstone Empire only less than 50,000 returned. We have 400,000 troops of the feudal lords and 400,000 regular troops of the empire. Zhuang Yan, may I ask, if the Tianji Empire wants to launch another expedition, what will they use to fight against us?" Lin Muyu stood up, her eyes full of contempt. "Zhuang Yan, have you fought with the main force of the Tianji Empire?" No, then what gives you the right to talk nonsense here?" Lin Muyu's palm landed heavily on the table, causing everyone's teacups to fly. Her voice was not loud, but it was very penetrating. "Forgive me for being blunt, the 700,000 feudal lords may not even be able to defeat the 100,000 regular troops of the Tianji Empire. Everyone, don't be complacent all day long. Instead of wasting time here, why don't you think about how to strengthen the army? If the army of the celestial pole continent attacks again, what you have now will disappear." The feudal lords were dumbfounded. No one expected Lin Muyu to fly off the handle in public. "Lin General, calm down." Qin Shao was a little embarrassed. Lin Muyu also suddenly felt that what she had said was a little inappropriate. She said respectfully, "General, I misspoke just now. I hope you don't mind. I won't participate in the afternoon meeting. The commanders of the Empire's army are discussing military affairs in Zetian Palace." "Okay, Lin General, go do what you have to do. I will take charge of the Congress." "Yes." In the afternoon, in Zhe Tian Palace, Qin Yin was listening to the military affairs meeting regarding the reconstruction of the empire's army. All the commanders of the army attended the meeting. The group of generals all sat up straight and looked at the scroll in Lin Muyu's hand with burning eyes. What was written on it was very important. It was related to the future combat power of each army. Can we start? Lin Muyu looked up. Everyone said in unison, Lin General, make the announcement. Okay. Lin Muyu nodded and said, after discussion with Xiao Yin, we have decided to keep the Empire's 10 army divisions. Among them, the Longdan army camp will have 100,000 soldiers, the Imperial army will have 80,000 soldiers, the Iron Blade army will have 50,000 soldiers, the God Might battalion will have 30,000 soldiers, the Qin Dragon army will have 20,000 soldiers, the National Garrison army will have 30,000 soldiers, the Kanglan army will have 10,000 soldiers, the 7 navies will have 30,000 soldiers, the Cangnan army will have 50,000 soldiers, and the Mingshan army will have 50,000 soldiers. There will be a total of 10 army divisions. If the demon army in the Tongtian Gorge is added, it will be 11. We will do our best to replenish the numbers after drawing troops. Does anyone have any objections? Yes. In the crowd, Tang Zhen, the commander of the National Garrison Army, stood up and cupped his fists. Lin General, the defense of the Empire's border is empty. There are no troops stationed in Lingdong province, and it has been repeatedly robbed by the Blackstone Empire's mercenary corps. Which army should we send to Winterfrost City? You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.